So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about spoilers and the movie's major moments, all of the big characters and some of the things that they dealt with, the overall conflict of the film, and of course, the post-credit scenes and the future implications that this film may or may not have on the MCU. But before we really dive in, just want to start off with your general big picture thoughts about the movie and just pass it over to you to sort of just give the folks your introductory sort of spiel on how you felt about the Marvels.
It's messy, but it's fun. That's really like the biggest tagline that I can pick for this movie. It is extremely messy, but I think there are things in here that are absolutely a good time. Man, I, I'm gonna start with some of the problems I have, and one of them, to be honest, is honestly the villain, which I absolutely like her performance here. I do, but to be honest, the villain is copy paste Ronan, to be honest, and it's like not much to her. Unfortunately, in the film, we don't get a lot of backstory. We don't get enough heart for her, and I think that also, to me, a lot of times your plot and your villain should go hand in hand, and unfortunately, both are kind of lacking in this film. And again, I think the lack of some of that character development from our big bad in this film takes away from the movie a little bit. And that's a big doc, I think, for this movie. That's a big taking down for the movie for me in terms of everything that kind of transpired, because on the other hand of things, on the other side, on the bright side, there is this ensemble cool cast who are fun to watch on screen together. Iman Vellani, Tiana Paris, and Brie Larson are absolutely the heart of the film, if not even more specifically Iman Vellani, who was just killing it for absolutely. I really think she's just one of those people that was born to play a character. She's kind of like the Tom Holland Spider-Man, or like the Deadpool Ryan Reynolds. It's like, no, this girl was made to be Kamala Khan. And I say that just because she definitely, when you watch her, she feels like Kamala Khan is just this fangirl turned superhero. And Iman Vellani feels like that in the way that she portrays the character. She feels like she's really playing herself a lot of the times. And I absolutely find that endearing about her character. But this movie is wacky, man. There's a lot going on. You've seen in the trailers, there's some switching happening, and they do some cool things with it. There's a couple of action sequences that involve the switching that I actually liked. I was like, oh, I actually like the choreography for the most part when it came to a decent amount of the fights, but some of the stuff was just messy. I'll talk about it in the spoiler review, but there's some editing things and some timing things and some other things that just weren't complete feeling for me, and it kind of took away from it. Another thing I'll add is the I guess the overarching feel of the film was not completely tonally where I needed it to be. There are moments, emotional moments, where I feel like I should have been more invested than I was. And I was and they didn't do the groundwork that I thought they were going to do, that felt like that they teased you that they were going to do, that they end up not really talking about too much. And I was like, okay, we could have used more of that. And in fact, I know this, we came into this and I was really excited about this being one of the shorter MCU films. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's get in and get out. But then by the end of it, I was like, you could have used more time here. You probably could have used more time over here developing some of the relationships with these characters. And so even though I was happy with the runtime, part of me is like, dang, part of me wishes y'all didn't, y'all went with a longer movie and maybe fleshed some of these things out or paid attention to other things. But I will give this movie another plus by way of, they kind of just get into it. And I was like, okay, I like that. They kind of hop into the film. It's not one of those long spin up movies that takes us a second to get into the action. They really kind of get to it. And I appreciate about the film as well. Man, so much more to add, of course. But overall, I actually have had a good time with this film. I just wish there was a little bit more attentiveness to some of the small details. I wish the character moments, a lot of the character moments were longer. I wish the villain had more purpose. You know, purpose is again the word for the MCU probably for the next 10 years. I wish the villain had more purpose, though. Again, she definitely has motive and purpose. There should have been more to care about the villain. I know that sounds crazy. Why should I care about a villain? But that's what makes villains good. To me, Thanos, you're like, oh, all these people are dead or dying. That's why he wants to do this thing. And for her, it was just like, I see it, but I don't feel it. And I need to feel it more than I see it. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I had a good time, but messy is definitely the word when it comes to this movie.
The Marvels is a perfectly okay movie at best for me. And I think it's probably the seventh best superhero movie of this year, which it's not saying a lot. I have Guardians of the Galaxy. Actually, no, I have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse,
Mm,
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3,
yeah.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem,
Ooh,
The
yep.
Flash.
Hmm.
I have Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania above it. I also have Shazam Fury of the Gods above it, and then the Marvels, and then Blue Beetle, which, half of that list is pretty mediocre, like straight up. That's just the fact of it. It's not been a great year for
Yeah.
superhero films. They've all been like all right, with the exception of that top three. But this is one of those films that just feels all over the place at all points in time of its existence. And going into the movie, I was excited about the shorter runtime. I was excited about the fact that it was 105 minutes. I think most movies need to be shorter, especially in the past 3 years where every studio, every tech company is greenlighting these long ass movies because they are afraid to piss off their directors. I
Hmm.
actually like and enjoy and appreciate shorter movies. And so I was excited about that. But then you walk out of the theater on the other side and you realize it is clear and it's evident that they cut so much out of this movie, that there was a lot left on the editing room floor that probably would have been more useful and more serviceable to the story. Of course, every movie needs to be trimmed. I'm sure that there were some things in the film that probably didn't work. I've heard stuff about sequences that might have been longer, and I look at that and
Hmm.
I think, like, absolutely not. I don't need more of that. But from a
Hmm.
story perspective, from an emotional perspective, from a chemistry perspective, even between all of your leads and, of course, the antagonist, sometimes you do need a little bit more in order to understand motivations, in order to connect the story that you're telling with the overall plot of the film. And it just felt like the Marvels was missing all of those pieces. And there's a bit of a tonal whiplash for me, at least, between the first half of the movie, which I actively was enjoying, and the second half of the movie, which really lost me. The second half and the latter
Hmm.
45 to 50 minutes of this movie really, really lost me. And that's unfortunate because it's kind of all about how you start and how you end. That middle can be a little bit more forgiving, but if you just end on a bad note and leave me with a bad taste in my mouth, that's going to be probably more memorable than how you made me feel at the top of the
Hmm.
film. And I just felt like that by the end of this, we were shortchanged and kind of robbed of some really, really good moments, especially between the three leads,
Yes.
which ultimately that is the best part about this movie. The chemistry
Hmm.
between Brie Larson, Tiana Paris, and Iman Vellani is the reason to watch this film. Sadly, I wouldn't say that there's really any other reason to watch this movie, but those three do so much heavy lifting to carry this to a place that make it just an okay movie, because without that chemistry, this is a bad superhero movie. And for some people it is. For me, it's not. It's not a total train wreck. It's not awful, but you just look at it and you think about the landscape and you think that, okay, well, if this was released in 2014, this would probably be one of the better movies. But when you're deep into a cinematic universe that has 32 other films, 9 or 10 television shows, when you give me something that feels like everything else that we've damn near already seen before, you have to work a lot harder to make me feel like it's special. That's the same problem that I think Blue Beetle had earlier this year, the same
Hmm.
problem that Shazam Fury of the Gods had this year. These are okay films if you enjoy this type of story and if you enjoy these type of properties. But if you're an active viewer and an active fan and you engage with the stuff on a frequent basis like we do, then we've seen it before. This isn't necessarily doing anything new. Like, I've seen teams work together and try to figure out how to have chemistry and all of that stuff. I've
Hmm.
seen trash fucking villains before too, which the MCU has been notorious of. And this is another entry into that list of trash ass villains. And that's not a slight against Zoe Ashton. I don't think it's her fault. It's the way that
Hmm.
the character is written and the way that the character is executed in the story. There's no reason to care about Dar-Benn in this movie. And I'd be surprised if people actually remember the name of this character. This falls right in the same rung as a Malekith, as a Ronin, as a Whiplash, like those characters that just don't really have much. And the fact
Hmm.
that she is derivative of Ronin the Accuser also doesn't help her case. Like that is a problem in and of itself. And so all in all, the Marvels, it's fine. It's cool. There are some funny moments. Genuinely, I will give it that made me laugh, especially in the case of Iman Vellani, who is a superstar and is just so good in this role and does so much comedic and emotional work to get you to care about her and her family. And there are some good chemistry moments between the three leads. And there were a couple of funny jokes that Samuel L. Jackson said that made me chuckle. But beyond that, when you really look at this and when you really examine it against the other films that we receive, it's mid at best. It's mid tier at best, honestly, for me. And that's an unfortunate thing because I was somewhat looking forward to this. I was somewhat looking forward to the fact that the Marvels as a property, Captain Marvel as a property within the MCU was going to get sort of a makeover, sort
Hmm.
of a new fresh coat of paint after that first film, which I really don't like. But that's not really the case here. It's only nominally better than the first one. It's not significantly better than the first one, which I certainly hoped would not be the case, but ultimately turned out to be the case. But folks, with all of that out the way, we're going to go ahead and dive into spoilers. So if you've not seen the Marvels, this is your official spoiler warning to go ahead and duck out if you choose, if you care, and wait and watch the film and then come back and listen to the rest of our conversation. So let's start, of course, with Brie Larson, who plays Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, coming back here in this role. This is probably what, maybe her fourth appearance in the MCU. Of course, her first film, she was in Avengers Endgame, had a quick little pop up in What If. I can't remember if she voiced the character in that or not. And now we're seeing her back here in the Marvels. She also appeared in the post credit scene of Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings a couple of years ago, which some people may have forgotten about. But
Hmm.
she's the lead. A lot of the story is supposed to center around her character, where we have sort of left off with her since the last film. Her interactions, of course, which is of extreme importance with Monica Rambeau, and then subsequently throughout the course of this movie with Aman Vellani as Kamala Khan. You know, the place that we find her in as the movie thrusts us right into the beginnings of it is kind of on a mission, operating under the leadership and the guidance of Nick Fury, which we know they have a long-standing relationship, and she's sort of working on behalf of the Sword organization, and there's the Saber space station and all of
Hmm.
these things. And so as we dive deeper into her character and some of the things that occur, you know, what overall did you think about what Brie Larson brought to this role in this particular film as Carol Danvers, especially considering where we have previously seen her in other properties?
You know, she I don't it's something about this character, man. They cannot get right. And here again, it's never Brie Larson. It's always like something they should have wrote or spent more time on. I always feel like with her character, because I do like her in the role, but in a lot of ways, because to be honest, Aman Vellani takes so much charisma. She has so much charisma and takes up so much screen. It feels like her movie more than it feels like a Brie Larson Captain Marvel movie at all. And in Carol Danvers in this film, one of the big things of this whole movie, right, is the fact that she went in there and destroyed the Supreme Intelligence. That should be like high key. Half the movie should be like, damn, this woman did this thing. They showed it in like 3 minutes. By the way, Supreme Intelligence is not like a small thing in Marveldom in the world of Marvel, and we watch her do it in like a 3 minute flashback. And not only that, but it doesn't eat her up as much as it feel like it should, because there's so much time that also feels like should go to Monica Rambeau, that feels like should go to Aman Vellani when they all show up. There's just so much to do here that we never get a appropriate time amount for anything. And so again, I think her as an actress in this role, I still like her. I still love her. I love the way she gets back up when she gets knocked down, whatever that is. I still like the smirk that she does. Like that all that stuff is fine. But I still, it feels like the emotion of the character isn't there because they never give us time to care about her. And not only that, but there is she's the most powerful person in the MCU right now. Legit. Her and old girl from Secret Invasion who has one of her powers. Whatever that's about. They need to just delete her out of the whole, just delete Secret Invasion. But Carol Danvers is literally the most powerful person in the MCU right now, right? I mean, uh, that's like a problem that's hard to get by, right? Versus a lot of our heroes always have like a some kind of block, or something happens where they get hurt or they're not as strong as they should be. She remains the most powerful and she knows it. And I feel like if you know that coming into the movie and you're watching the movie, like, man, this woman is powerful, spend time to knock her down for some reason. They don't really do that. They don't really, again, take time for her to get eaten up. That the antagonist has this whole world over here, Hala, where the Kree live. They can't breathe air. Why aren't we spending time with Brie Larson in her being guilty that a whole world can't breathe air? Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. I just feel like there's more time to be spent there to care about what was happening in the movie for her character. And so yeah, it was easy not to pay attention to that. Again, her own story, when like you're just excited that Mom Vellani's in the room because she's excited that she's in the room. That's like, oh yeah, I'll pay attention to that. That's more fun. And so yeah, I again, it's nothing on Brie Larson, but something about Carol Danvers, man, that they still haven't figured out. That fresh coat of paint that you were talking about that they need to repaint, like, oh, this is how she fits. They still haven't done it, man. I feel like they had an opportunity, but they missed it.
They invested literally no time into the story to catch us up with what she's been doing and where she's been. We're just left to assume that she's still working alongside Nick Fury and she's working on behalf of Sword. Okay, that's cool. But there's that one line later in the movie when you have Kamala and Monica on the ship with her after her and Monica have sort of, hashed it out about her absence and not coming back to Earth. And she's like, considering the circumstances, it's nice to have people here. It gets lonely here sometimes, which I think is a good line, but they never explored that any deeper or any further. Exactly. Oh, really, Carol? Tell me more about that. Like, what have you been doing for 30 years in the galaxy? Like, that probably simple. Would be a super lonely experience. And really all they do is provide a moment to just have flashbacks to Captain Marvel when they do the whole memory introduction with her, which, okay, that's fine. Like, that's a quick way to catch people up to speed with the events of the last movie. But there's a lot that's occurred in between that they just never allude to. And we've just never, ever gotten any of that stuff. Like, we don't even really understand and know, like, what her experience was like during the blip. And, maybe that could have been something that was detestable by audiences. I know certain people are tired of hearing about the blip, but we don't even get to understand that because she survived. Like, she was around for those 5 years. She was on the Avengers. She worked with Black Widow, like worked alongside Rocket Raccoon. Like, what was that like? Like, there could have been a couple of lines about that stuff. Like, I was on Earth when half of humanity was decimated, and they just never allude to any of that stuff. And it's just such a strange decision to me when she is supposed to be the lead of the movie, really sort of the emotional focal point. And as you said, with the whole Supreme Intelligence stuff, which is just almost disregarded entirely, like that's damn near a nothing plot. Like, they just speed by that so quickly. I think the one thing that they do try to really attach to her character is this identity of being the Annihilator. We constantly hear a lot of the Kree soldiers who come in contact with her as being the Annihilator, which again, I think is a good idea, as being viewed as somebody who's evil as opposed to being a hero, because you cause so much destruction and potentially death, for so many people, but it's just a name that's just blurted out. That's all it really is. And we just get the event of her destroying the Supreme Intelligence and cool. All right. We just kind of move on from there. But like, there could have been other Kree a part of this movie who dove deeper, not Dar-Benn, because I don't think that that's her purpose, but maybe some other Kree characters working on behalf of Dar-Benn, or who don't even have an allegiance necessarily, but they just know who that person is. They know who Carol Danvers is because she did so much to alter the course of what their humanity and what their population was going to look like for the next 30 years. And so a lot of missed opportunities there, certainly. But as we find her at the top of this film again, working with Nick Fury, one of the first things that we see is her going to this jump point anomaly, which, again, is sort of like the way that they established Dar-Benn, sort of interrupting and disrupting what's happening through space and time. And one of the first things that we see is that Carol does not want to see Monica under the circumstances of where she's in. She understands that Monica is working with Nick Fury. She understands that Monica has grown up, of course, and is a grown woman, but she knows that that's a point of contention that she's going to ultimately have to face at some point throughout this movie. And Nick Fury is talking to both Monica and Carol at the same time. And Monica is like, no, I'm not ready for this right now. Like, let me just do the mission. And then we're kind of off to this opening action sequence that I want to talk about really quickly, which is really the place that establishes this power switching between the three leads. And it happens like 13 or 14 minutes within the movie. So pretty quickly. And we get this huge opening action set piece where we see all of their powers at play. We see them switching all over the place. You have one hand somebody on the moon, at another point somebody's on a Kree space station, and then the third point is Miss Marvel's living room, and they're just switching back and forth, and it's so much happening, it's so
It is.
chaotic, which I do think is a good thing because it represents just like how chaotic something like that would be. But what did you think about just, being thrust into that moment so quickly to see like, oh, now the three heroes are going to have to figure out what's going on, and Carol was kind of the first, I guess, kind of the first victim of it, because they teased it in Miss Marvel, this power
Yeah.
switching, right? And
Mhm.
and they call back to that exact same scene. So what did you think about the execution of it and how it overall sort of contributed to just the chaotic nature of that moment in the story?
Oh man, they peaked. It was like my favorite part of the movie. I think they peaked in that moment. I really do. I think that moment, that action scene, really was what the movie was supposed to be, or set the tone for what the film was supposed to be. Again, these three people switching in crazy places, how they end up connecting, right? I think one of the cool things about all of this is like, because of Kamala Khan, that Carol Danvers and Monica Rambeau are kind of forced to meet each other again through her. I was like, yeah, that's kind of a cool idea and concept. And again, if you've watched, there is reward, I think, if you watch Miss Marvel, in watching Kamala Khan's family go through like this whole battle scene with them. It's like, yeah, her family is freaking cool, by the way, for going through that, but they're hilarious too. And you're getting to see them again, and they're getting more screen time. And I thought it was just a good sequence. I really do. I like the choreography again. I like when they switch in certain moments and they're ready to go and things are happening. Again, unfortunately, the thing I don't like about this is that I feel like they peaked in the movie, because there was so much going into this. I expected maybe a sequence that was maybe better down the line. And they do try again, right? Third acts against Dar-Benn or whatever, but it didn't feel like this. It didn't feel as chaotic as this did. Even that was supposed to be, oh, we practiced our powers, this and that. This felt was fun because there was no practice. This felt fun because it was so chaotic in nature. And so yeah, I actually really liked the scene. I thought they did a good job for the most part across the board. There was laughs in it. Again, cool fighting things in it. And yeah, I thought they would utilize this tool more, I think, throughout the film. But then there's like, they do, but just not in this way. It did feel fun. It did feel fresh because it was so crazy. And so yeah, I enjoyed it, and I thought it was. Unfortunately, I think they like peaked in this moment in the movie.
It was a great action sequence. It is my favorite sequence of the movie, especially in the way of action. Incredibly well choreographed. The camera movements were also really, really good and
Mm-hmm.
fluid. And you can tell that Brie Larson and Tiana Paris and even Iman Vellani, like, they did a fair share of their own stunts. Not everything, of course, but you can see their faces in a lot of these sequences where they
Mm-hmm.
are very, very active and getting very, very physical. And so much is happening because you're in three different locations. And then you throw in Nick Fury, who's also just trying to hold his own. He has like a blaster, and so that's funny too because you get to see him interact with Monica and then with Kamala, and he's just trying to figure it out as well. So all of that stuff really, really worked for me. And once again, I think showcasing Carol's power where she's like fighting, but she's not having problems or trouble fighting the Kree. The
Mm-hmm.
problem is that she can't stay consistently in one place. She's getting interrupted
Exactly.
over and over again. That's really the problem. They can handle them easily. It's just that they don't really understand what's going on and they're trying to figure it out in that moment. And I think with the music and, of course, the family, all of that stuff happening at the same time, that chaotic nature, the way that they just throw you into the action, it's
Mm-hmm.
really welcomed and it's really refreshing. And the unfortunate thing is that it doesn't really get better than this in the way of action. Like, this is the
Exactly.
best action sequence in the movie. It's also a shame. I think they released a good amount of this online. I didn't watch it, but I did see some clips starting to like allude to this scene being sort of released early in terms of promotion for the film. But I do think it's a high watermark for action, and it felt inventive and creative and really, really cool. I also want to say Brie Larson looked really good in this movie. You can tell she was working out a
Oh,
lot. She was super fit, super thin, like ready to go. Like,
what waste?
she looked exactly. I think she looked good. Like, she clearly puts in the work and the time to like get ready
Mm-hmm.
and get in shape. And if you follow her on Instagram, you can just easily go see like how much she works out and preps and trains, for these types of movies. And so I definitely want to shout her out. Like she definitely looked the part. She looked like a superhero and represented
Yeah.
Carol in a good physical way. And so let's move on to Monica though, because she does have a pivotal role not only in this scene, but of course just the
Ah,
introduction of
yes.
of the film and the tone. Before we talk about specific moments, I mean, how excited were you to see Monica be a part of this, just considering like where she started off in WandaVision, had a very, very huge role to play in that show, got her powers, of course,
Yeah.
becomes what we know to be as Photon or Spectrum or Captain Marvel, whatever moniker you want to use, which is interesting because in the 80s, like she was Captain Marvel, and so for a whole
Yeah,
generation, for a lot of
that's true.
people, she was Captain Marvel, not these other aliases. But despite that, how excited were you to see her in this movie and what she was going to bring in terms of narrative threads over from WandaVision into this project?
Man, you mean my wife, Tiana Paris? I'm just kidding. Man, of course I was excited. I have her shirt is on, her face is on my shirt right now. But man, Monica Rambeau, again, when it comes to comics, she's just always kind of been like this cool ass character. Again, like you said, she was a Captain Marvel at some point, but she's always been like this cool ass, just light chick, man. And she's a part of so much. I mean, she's been a part of Thunderbolts back in the day. She's been a part of Avengers, right? She's been a part of shoot, I think her first appearance is freaking a Spider-Man comic, you know what I mean, as Captain
Mm.
Marvel. And so it's just she just always been one of those black women mainstays that at least that I've known growing up, man. And again, we haven't had a chance to ever explore her story. Like, of course, plenty of characters, other character stories, right? But seeing her in WandaVision, even before she gets her powers, I'm like, oh, I know where this is going. Everybody knows the name Monica Rambeau. Even shoot, Captain Marvel too. You know where this is going when you hear about Monica Rambeau. And so I was just excited, I think, to see her fleshed out in whatever capacity that meant, man. It didn't have to be anything crazy for her. I was just excited, to be honest, for her to be on screen. Not only that, but give me some small story beats, right? Get us accustomed to the character and what she likes, what her, normal characteristics of any character, because we just haven't gotten that with her character. So I was excited for her to be kind of planted in this film in particular, because I thought they would do a lot of that groundwork. I thought they would do a lot of she misses her mom because of this. She resents Brie Larson because of this. She welcomes Iman Vellani's character. She welcomes Kamala Khan because of this. That's kind of the things I was looking for in this film when it came to her. Again, it didn't have to be anything crazy. She didn't have to be some crazy super, you know what I mean? Something. Just give me character. I'm gonna start saying that's probably one of my new sayings. Give me character. Because sometimes it's just missing. And so that's what I was looking for from her in this film in particular, man. And Tiana Paris, she's gonna always show up and do what she needs to do. But again, it's one of those things where she was a little, again, this movie is so messy, some things about these characters were lost in the sauce. And I think Tiana Paris absolutely is also kind of a victim of that, again, particularly with between her and Brie. You spoke to it a second ago where Samuel Jackson's like, she says to Monica, like, y'all gonna have to speak at some point, right? And then they do, but it's like 3 minutes, you know what I'm saying? I don't know, there's just not enough there that I was looking for. But maybe again they're setting up her character for longevity in the MCU. But overall, again, I enjoy her, but I just wish there was more to chew on when it comes to these characters in this movie.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, honestly, outside of that. I pretty much agree with everything. I just, I like Tiana Paris. She's a good actress. I like her in everything that she's been in. I like her presence. I like what she brings to the screen, and she clearly has chemistry with the other two, with Amon and with Brie. That's obviously evident. And I like what her character represents in the comics and the fact that she's
Mhm.
super intelligent and knows a lot and really is working on behalf of this Horde organization, which is kind of taking up the mantle from Shield. And so like you have now two black people in the MCU in prominent positions of power. Like Nick Fury has once again ascended and she's working sort of as his right hand man,
Mhm.
alongside Captain Marvel in this movie. And I think that's a cool thing because she's always been a pretty cool character in the comics too. And of course, those threads between her and Carol had to be explored here. You know, the first time we really, I think, understood that that was going to be the case was in WandaVision. You know, it was sort of
Mm,
mid-season when they brought up Captain Marvel. Somebody, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Darcy, but they were like,
mm.
"Oh yeah, Captain Marvel damn near beat Thanos," and you can see her face, Monica's face in that moment, like, "Oh fuck, why did they just bring her up? I got something against her," and we knew
Yeah.
over 2 years ago, like, oh, they're gonna have to explore that in this movie. And after we get that opening scene where we see Monica's not ready to have that conversation, well, she doesn't have long. Just a few minutes later, they got to have that conversation essentially because they see
Hmm.
each other in Kamala's living room, which is just like the most ironic of circumstances. Like, not only do they meet unwillingly, they meet in a place that they could have never predicted and be tied in with this third person who also has similar powers to them. Did you feel, you know, even in that first moment, like when they first just sort of look at each other and they have that sort of moment of tension? Like, we know the conversation isn't going to happen just yet, but like, were you excited at that point where you get that back and forth where it's like, oh yeah, I'm so excited to see you, Lieutenant Trouble, and she bounces back. She's like, no, it's Captain Rambeau now. Like, fuck what you mean? I'm not this young girl anymore, and you know, you
Hmm.
have to recognize that I've grown up and I have something against you at this particular point.
No, that's absolutely that's a good moment. It's a really good moment actually. Play on the tension of them not speaking for all of this time. Like this is I can't imagine not seeing somebody for that long, and then they just pop up. And not only that, but it's funny because Captain Marvel like doesn't age, so she just always looks
Ages
the
backwards,
same as what
probably.
you, yeah, bro, Heike is what you once left her, and so it's also crazy because even before Captain Marvel shows up, remember, or it might have been after, but Amon Villani, he's like, "Did you just call her Aunt Carol?" I was like, "Wait, did she say that?" So it's crazy because you can clearly see kind of these emotions fighting within you, right? I'm sure it's part of Monica's like, I finally got to see her, and the other part of it was like, man, you left us and you never came back, kind of type thing. So I absolutely love that moment again because it has a lot of tension, and I appreciated that tension again. You got to do something with the tension, though. You know what I'm saying? You just got to do something with it. I'm not sure they succeeded on that front, but I like that moment a lot though because they're locking eyes. And Brie Larson, I keep saying Brie Larson, but Carol Danvers even like is happy when she says Lieutenant Trouble, thinking she's gonna get like a good response back. I like that acting choice too. She's like, "Good to see you, Lieutenant Trouble." Smile, and Monica is not having it at all. So yeah, I think it's a good moment.
A part of what's wrapped up in that tension too, which is really important to Monica's character, is the fact, of course, that, you know, that's Aunt Carol and she looked up to her as a young girl. That was obviously explored in the first movie. But maybe even more importantly is the fact that Carol and her mother Maria were best friends. Like they were
Mhm.
like sisters essentially. And we know Maria Rambeau has passed away in this universe because of cancer, and they explored that in WandaVision that
Yeah.
she actually passed away while Monica was blipped. And so she pops back up in a hospital thinking that her mother's going to be laying right there, and she's not. She finds out that her mother has died, and then goes on to find out that there was an interaction between Carol and her mother while she was
Mm,
blipped away. So Carol did indeed return to Earth at some point, but it was while Monica couldn't even be present to experience that moment in the
crazy.
final days of her mother's life. So that's a really, I think, a really strong and emotional place that
Hmm.
they introduced into this movie. What did you think about that? Also, kind of being the linchpin for the source of tension, the fact that, yeah, this goes even beyond just Monica and Carol and what their relationship represented when she was a young girl, but it's
Hmm.
even deeper than that. Like, my mother passed away, and you were gone, and then you showed up while I was gone, and you didn't tell me. You didn't even come back to tell me that you interacted with her. Like, they explore all of that somewhat later in the movie when we get that sort of
Yeah.
flashback and that memory sequence.
That should have been the meat and potatoes of at least those two Marvels together. That should have been like every time they on screen passed and they're together in the ship or whatever. Let's talk about that. Because that is the deepness I think I was looking for with Monica's character, right? She's missing multiple people at that point, right? She didn't just miss her mom. Now it's like she don't think Carol ever came back. Like there's a lot there to unpack. And I think I again you everything you just said. I love the setup. I love that story. I love all of that. She came back while I was blipped. Damn, I didn't know that. Like that's a lot. And yeah, man, I just wish they went with that little bit harder. Like bring that home because that's a good stroke from the pen and writing. It really is. It's just like, come on, bring it home. and they don't do that. But really good ideas there. Again, even from Carol Danvers' point of view, why not mix in? Again, this thing about this movie, there's so much for her to be guilty about. So much for her to be guilty about. Her not being there for quote unquote Lieutenant Trouble. Her starving a civilization of air and a sun.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just so much there. Let's use that. And they just don't do it how they should. But again, it's like they got all the what they need to build up that story. They have all the base. They have the base of that story, man. They couldn't hit the climax. I think how they wanted to hit the climax. But I really like the shapes in the pieces that they had together for that particular storyline.
It's almost like Monica needed to fucking just yell at Carol. Like they had their moment on the ship. They go back and forth. It's emotional. She's on the verge of tears. Carol's on the verge of tears. She was like, I didn't want to disappoint you. And even what's even more interesting is that Carol doesn't even totally tell the truth to Monica about why she was gone. That entire time she was like, there were other places that needed me. And Monica, she bounces back and says like, well, we needed you, which is true. But then we find out later that Carol was really gone and really absent because she didn't want this new persona that's been thrust upon her as being the annihilator, this person who starved a civilization, who's taken away resources. She didn't want that to be the image that Monica saw of her. So that's really the more underlying issue, which again is just kind of shoehorned a little too late into the movie, when it's not as effective as it could have been. And then they just all of a sudden accept each other. It's like, oh, it's cool. I didn't need you to be that. Like, I just needed you to be my aunt. It's like, no, we weren't there at the top of this movie. Like, it had to be a little bit more than that. Like, of course, y'all have spent a little bit of time, but I think that that's just like, it's rushed a little bit too quickly for my liking in this film. One thing I want to ask you before we move on from Monica, how did you feel about her powers? Because that is like one of the things that I think we were curious to see. We briefly saw him in WandaVision, at least, how they manifested, but this is like a source of the story where she has light-based powers, very much like Carol and Kamala do, but she can phase through objects and she can see light, so she can see the entire electromagnetic spectrum. So how did you feel about the way that they represented that in the movie, how they brought it to life, the way she utilized her powers throughout the different action sequences? Just let me know, did it work for you, or were you sort of looking for more out of her entire power display?
Maybe a little bit more. I just feel like they were gonna do a couple more things with her abilities. For instance, they all end up on the ship looking at Dar-Benn, right? And she kind of uses her ability to see light, as she says, to kind of look at the power that's radiating off of one of the bangles that Dar-Benn has. I was like, oh, we're gonna do something with this eye power more. And we don't really do anything with that at all, to be honest. She doesn't really use that for any reason. In fact, beyond the quick fight that we see, and a couple fights that we see, really it's not till the end, right? She makes the big sacrifice, quote unquote, that we see like the extent of what she can handle and her powers and some of the things that she can do. Because I think at some point, they do know her as some kind of goddess, sun goddess, light goddess. I don't know. She becomes something in that in that realm, but it's like, oh, I don't know. It's like that's what she's supposed to do kind of moment, instead of like showcasing the things that she can do throughout the film. I feel like she never really had like a one-on-one moment that we feel like, oh, this woman is a badass. Does that make sense? A lot of the movie, we're getting so much ensemble stuff. We've already seen Miss Marvel on her own show. We've already seen what Captain Marvel can do on multiple fronts. We still really haven't gotten like the Monica Rambeau can whoop ass moment. You know what I'm saying? We still haven't really gotten that, and it still seems to be overshadowed by other things. Again, maybe not enough time in the film to give her a moment to be like, oh yeah, she can whip ass. Again, we do get it in small sequences and small parts, but not really like, it doesn't make me feel like she's a standalone, oh yeah, Monica Rambeau has it kind of character. And I still feel that by the end of the film, like, damn, they still didn't really give her moment. So maybe it's coming, maybe they're saving it down the line. Who knows? Who cares? I wanted to see it in this movie, and I didn't really get it. But I think the way they use her powers, it makes sense. One of the things I really like is how drawn she is to like these walls of light, almost like I don't know, like a baby in a candy shop. It's the best thing I can. But or maybe like a bee to a flower, right? Like, ooh, what is this thing? I love how she's drawn to light. I think that's really cool and something that they should continue to play with their power set. Because I like that, like somebody who has light powers is like, oh, what's this light thing over here? And it draws them to that. I really like that part of her. But again, I hope again maybe they use her a little bit more down the line. But I think overall they did okay.
It's a pretty clever method to intertwine all of their powers. I think that that's a cool concept, but one thing that is a bit restricting is the fact that once you do that, the characters in themselves in the story have to realize, well, we can't really always use our powers because we're going to unwillingly switch places. That becomes
Mhm.
like a part of the story where it's like, hey,
That's
do
true.
this, but don't use your powers. That's written into the script because it has to be, because you would do that when you realize that you would unwillingly be switched in a certain circumstance that wouldn't be beneficial at all. So they have to hold back. Even Carol in this movie, compared to what we saw in the first movie, has to hold back. We don't
Mhm.
ever really get a moment where Captain Marvel just unfucking leashes and shows how truly powerful she is. Like that final sequence in the first movie where she destroys Ronan's armada, it's like, oh man, that she's
Mhm.
crazy powerful. Like she is one of the most powerful people in the MCU. There's not a single moment like that in the movie. And I think just by the nature again of the story, we don't even get similar moments like that with Monica or Kamala. They
That's
have to
true.
strictly use them in battle or in a method in which they understand, like, okay, well, we know we're going to switch, and this is the plan to switch, and so that's when you use your powers. I do think that they did a little bit better with Kamala, in her showcase
I
as
agree.
opposed to Monica, but that is one of the things I think that kind of holds them back when you tell this type of story, and so it's a little unfortunate. I do think that there could have been a little bit more. They tried to give her the moment at the end, which it's fine, it's okay, but I don't think we really understand the magnitude of like what it means and what it represents. It's like it's
Yeah.
it's probably a little bit more they could have done, but not the worst job, but it was certainly something that could have been, I think, added and felt like a bit of a missing piece to the story. But let's get to Aman Vellani, who plays Kamala Khan, aka Miss Marvel, who we were introduced to a little bit over a year ago in her show. And I think after we walked away from that show, we both liked it a pretty good deal. It wasn't great per se. I think, in my opinion, it worked best as a show when it was focusing on her discovering her
Mhm.
powers and her family and her interactions with her friends. But when it became like this bigger superhero story, I think that's where it kind of lost me. But it's still a pretty good show with some really, really good episodes, especially the early ones. And so I was really excited to see her and what she was going to bring to this movie. And obviously, Kamala Khan as a character, I think represents something that is always earnest in superhero storytelling, and that's that younger
Mhm.
hero who's super excited to be a hero. They are absolutely wanting to be there. They want to be in the moment. They want to use their powers. They want to impress other people. We know Peter Parker has a long history of that, and then in the MCU context, like that's what he did for Mr. Stark. He just wanted to impress Mr. Stark and be an Avenger. So, what did you think about Kamala Khan as a character in this movie, and Aman Vellani's performance, and just the overall energy and sort of the buoyancy that she sort of brought to the story?
I do not have a lot of notes for Iman Vellani, man. I think she is again the heart of the story. And every time she's on screen, she's doing something either to make you laugh or to make you feel something or to she's just I think was really kind of firing on all cylinders. Even the moment she gets transported to the ship and she sees Goose for the first time, she's like, a cat. What is this cat doing? And then she sees a cat eat people. She's like, and she screams, and it feels very organic. It feels like a real scream. Like, what the hell? Is this cat eating people? And she screams a couple times in this, but it always feels like, yeah, that's a moment you would scream. That makes sense. And she's funny too. A lot of the funniest moments in this come from her dealing with her and her family, her maybe I don't know, talking to Tiana Paris about something or Monica about something. It's just like, what? It's something about this girl, man, where I think she just gets it. She just fits in as Kamala Khan so well. There's even a moment where they come to her house, Monica Rambeau and
Oh, Nick
what's
Fury.
his name? Nick Fury
Yeah.
pull up to the house and she's like, wow, is that a new iPad? I haven't seen that yet. It's so small, but it's funny because it's see-through. Not only it's funny because it's see-through, because like 3 seconds later, she tries to have a conversation to talk to Monica and she like puts up the invisible see-through like little tablet. It's just I don't know. It's small things like that. just made her feel like she fit the movie so well. She really was like the light bright in the film. Her being the young teenager, it all translated well on the screen. The only note I will add, I guess, is they don't really touch on her want to be an Avenger that much anymore, if that makes sense. And that was like one of the things I was like, y'all not gonna say anything about that? I mean, when she sees Nick Fury at the top of it, she's like, oh, is this an Avengers test? She's literally spinning through space in a spacesuit. Like, oh, is this an Avengers test? And by the end of it, they kind of let it go and they kind of talk about something else, which we'll talk about later. But I thought there would be like oh, am I the Avengers now at the end of the movie? Or I don't know. I just thought they would harp on that slightly more, and they don't. But other than that, man, again, no notes with Iman Vellani. I think she did what she came to do. Again, heart of the movie, probably best part of the movie. And I think there is a lot of reward of knowing just where she came from too. I don't know. It's like Miss Marvel is really good watching material when it comes to this movie, I think. And it really helps know who she is as a character and where she gets her powers from and all of that, man. So just kudos to Iman Vellani doing what she came to do, man. I think she's really good at it.
Easily the best part of the movie for me. She just brings so much energy, so much charisma, so much, again, earnestness, as I said earlier, to a film that needs it. I think you need that perspective, because it's easy to look at other heroes who've done this for a while that are older and they're jaded, and Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, even in real life, Brie Larson might be kind of over this, but I think to have a younger person who's genuinely excited to be there is good to have, especially with the absence of a Spider-Man who's also becoming older in this universe as well. He's not always going to be that plucky
Exactly.
teenager that just wants to be in the room and impress Mr. Stark. And so I think that this is a good spot for Kamala Khan. It's also reminiscent of what she is in the comic books, and she's an expert as well. And I have a point sort of adjacently related to what you just brought up about her desire to be in the Avengers. I think the one note that I would have that I wanted to see a little bit more of is her knowledge of all of this shit. Like, they really
Mm-hmm.
expanded that in the show, like how much she knows about this world. She knows about every character, their backstory, how they became a hero, what they're up to. Like, we knew about Ant-Man's fucking book in her show before we ever saw Quantumania, because she
Yeah.
referenced it, and she talks
Mm-hmm.
about the podcast and what the heroes are doing. And I think that they could have done a little bit more of that. There is one moment where it's like she clearly knows her stuff about the MCU, where they do a clever callback in the final scene when she does eventually see
Mm-hmm.
Kate Bishop. Like, of course she would know the words that Nick Fury probably said to Tony Stark. Like, that's the one moment where it's like, yeah, Kamala is like an Avengers expert. She knows everything about this world. But I
Yeah.
think that there could have been more moments, more dialogue that just would have sort of examined, like, this girl is obsessed with all of these heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Carol is number one on her list, and they certainly play into that. One of the funnier moments of the movie is when Carol first switch places with Kamala, and she ends up in her bedroom, and you see just all the drawings on the wall, and just the fucking Kamala putting her face over Carol's body, and you got yes next to it. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, this girl is like out of control
Twinsies.
with this, with this obsession. And so that was genuinely good stuff. But beyond that small sort of nitpick, I think she was just absolutely amazing in this role. I want
Yeah.
I want to see her as much as possible. I hope she can stick around for a long time too and really grow into this role, and we can see
Mm-hmm.
her age up. And also I think along with that too, we kind of start the movie off with her. One thing I do want to quickly just acknowledge is sort of the illustrations and like her introduction into this movie. If you did watch Ms. Marvel, that started off as kind of a big point of the film, is that she's an artist as well. She can draw,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the way that we sort of see her story manifests in live action is through these illustrations, very reminiscent of actual comic books or Scott Pilgrim, sort of paying
Mm-hmm.
homage to that. How did you feel about just sort of that introduction of just like seeing her and the dream scenario that she sort of came up with in her head if she were to ever meet Carol Danvers in person?
To be honest, I actually give this movie a little bit more points because I actually pretend to see it from her point of view. From like, this is really just like a Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau space story in her head. And so some of the more ridiculous things that we see in the movie, like, I don't know, I'm gonna call it Disney World because that's literally what it was to me. It was like a Disney World where everyone sings. That seemed like something that would happen in a book. Even there's even that moment between her and Monica where they say something about oh, I bet you just wrote something in your fan fiction, your Captain Marvel fan fiction. She's like, oh, you have no idea, kind of type thing. And so I see a lot of this movie from that view of like of her drawing and painting and doing again a lot of these markings that she does at the beginning of the movie. I wish they used it more as like a creative tool. Like part of me wishes like I don't know, even part of the backstory of Captain Marvel was done in drawings, or I don't know. I just wish they used it like one more time in the movie to be like, oh yeah, no, this girl can draw. But also to your point, it also showcased she knows a lot about something. So I was hoping they would use it again, and they never really do, which is fine. But I was like, dang, I hope they use it again.
Yeah.
But I like it. It gives her a lot of charisma, and it gives her a lot of character. Again, give me character. It gives her a lot of character when she has these drawings. So I thought it was cool.
And it's different. It's different than everything else that we see in the MCU. Like nobody else
Mm-hmm.
is illustrating like that. And we don't ever see really any other stories illustrated in that way. Like they briefly kind of do that in Spider-Man, but more in like a playful way, like at the end credits or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. But like literally within the story, you get to see that. And one of the cool and clever things in the show is like the word bubbles that would pop up and just like the
Mm-hmm.
illustrations that would come up on screen when we transition to a different location. Like I think it could have used a little bit more. It shouldn't, hinder the movie and distract you from the central, plot, whatever plot there is really here. But I think that it could have been utilized more. One other thing that makes her important to this movie, really probably the thing that makes her the most important, is the fact that these bangles are kind of the central thing that start this whole thing off to begin with. Dar-Benn,
Mm-hmm.
the villain, finds a bangle on this planet, on this moon, this remote moon, and that gives her the ability to create these jump points in space. But we know that Kamala is in possession of the other bangle, which really kind of kicks off this power switching. Now, I think that I guess it makes sense, like theoretically, like what they're trying to do here. But I think my problem with this, and it's not the problem of Kamala Khan, but this one device, this one MacGuffin that is so central to the story. I mean, it's so intrinsically tied up in the Miss Marvel show. Like the bangle is of extreme importance to that show.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what a lot of it's about. And Kamala's family, her grandmother, the partition stuff that they did, like, and if you're listening and didn't watch Miss Marvel, you're like, what the fuck are you even talking about? Like, what is this stuff? So I don't know. Did it feel like maybe somewhat of a misguided decision? Like, I know that this is the story that they wanted to tell and the power switching had to happen, but the bangle is so important to this movie. And they don't spend a ton of time explaining like the physics of it and how it works and like how are they even able to do this? Like, what does this bangle represent? And it's supposedly, I guess, going to be important moving ahead, just based off of the post credit scene. I guess I don't know, but overall, like the usage of the bangle, like what were your thoughts on that throughout the movie?
So I thought that it would be more important because of the TV show Miss Marvel, and because of Shang-Chi. One, in the TV show, with the bangle, where her grandma found the bangle, right? There's a big ass 10 rings mark on where it lands at, like
That's
where they
right.
find it, first and foremost. So I was like, oh, they're definitely going to talk about that in the movie, especially given Captain Marvel's in the post-credit scene of Shang-Chi looking at the rings like, yeah, I have no idea where any of this came from. I just knew they was going to connect those two dots. I just knew they were, and they did not do it. And it still blows my mind that they didn't do it, because I thought they were not only going to shed light of where the Bengals come from, why not put it in the movie? If, like you said, the Bengals, like the whole part, there are like times where MacGuffin is used too much and times where it's not used enough. And they did not find the medium in this movie. They did not talk about these Bengals enough, especially when it's tied to Kamala Khan as a character, like for real, for real. It's like, I don't know, like
I
not
mean, it's the
talking
source
about
of her
Cap,
power,
source of
literally.
her. It's like not talking about Cap Shield at all. It's just a shield that exists. It's just kind of the, you know what I'm saying? Like it's literally the source of her power. And so I really don't understand why they decided to go that direction and not talk about the angle and how it works and all of that stuff enough, because it seemed like it was going to be a big part of the movie. Again, they show up on the ship with Dar-Benn, and Monica's using her eyes on the bangle, like, oh, it's radiating some crazy colors. I thought that was going to manifest to some. Again, sometimes exposition is okay. Tell us what's going on with the bangle. Is it, what's the history? Why does Dar-Benn know about this bangle so much? Is
Hmm.
it, I don't know. I just thought we would get more there, and we don't get it, and it's so weird to me, man. I was like, it's a MacGuffin, yeah, It's like an important one. We're not talking about this important ass MacGuffin. It was like actually driving me kind of crazy throughout the movie. But overall, I guess it ends up back in Kamala Khan's laps. And I guess maybe they're gonna explain it in season 2 or something. They gotta, I don't know. I don't know why they let that go, to be honest. It's like one of those things in the movie. I'm like, I don't know how we didn't go there, especially it's the beginning of the film. It's the first 5 minutes we're spending with Dar-Benn digging it up, and then we barely talk about it. It's just too many plot lines, I guess, happening in the movie that don't get what they deserve. And again, it feels like just things being undercut. And unfortunately, that Bengal was one of them. I was like, yeah, we should spend more time here.
Yeah, I mean, from the discovery of the bangle, you don't get any knowledge or history or even just acknowledgement of how Dar-Benn knows about it, how she knows to find it. To the combination and the usage of the bangle along with the Ronin hammer that she has, like I don't understand how those powers.
How does she know?
How would she know that? Also, when Ronin used that hammer in Guardians of the Galaxy, it was powered by an Infinity Stone.
Infinity Stone. They just gave her one for
And
free.
they just kind of just dumped it in there. And it's like they don't ever make it clear as to whether or not the power is coming from the bangle. I mean, I guess she puts the hammer on the bangle and magically she's able to create these jump points. I don't know.
Man.
It's just a bunch of fucking just like, let's just throw it in there and figure it out and blah, 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 blah. Who cares about the Bengals, whatever the fuck? Like, I'm just kind of confused at that. And maybe somebody smarter than me just automatically knows, like, well, this is the connection and this is how she knows. And these are how the powers works. But it just felt
Hold my
super
hand.
unclear to me. Like, really,
Yeah.
really guide me down the path of like what that's supposed to mean. Because even though it is a MacGuffin, that doesn't mean that it can't be something good. Like, MacGuffins can be really effective. We see that the Infinity
Exactly.
Stones were super effective, but this is just like kind of lost on me in how it works with the larger story. Also, like, the two Bengals together destroy Dar-Benn, but they don't destroy Kamala. How can we understand? Is it just because they choose? Like,
Maybe
what?
she's a mutant.
She's a right. She's immune. Like, she's like Thanos level fucking powerful, where she's the only one that can control the Bengals. Like, we don't. That's not clear. Like, that's, I don't
Not
know.
clear. I thought the same thing.
It's a missed
I just
opportunity for sure. Let's move on though and talk about her family though, because equally I think as important to the Kamala character is the family, which we saw a ton of in the Miss Marvel show, and they do mostly return here. Her mother Muniba, her father Yusuf, and her older brother Amir. We first see them again at the top of the movie where the Kree and this big fight take place in the living room, and they just absolutely fucking destroy their home in Jersey City. But they also sort of, tag along for the rest of the mission as well, because their daughter is still a teenager in high school, and it's like, you're gonna do what with her? You're taking her where? She's going to what galaxy? Like, no, the fuck she isn't. Especially her mother is like not having that. They know she's a superhero at this point. They know she has this quote unquote greater calling. A lot of that again was explored in the Miss Marvel show, but they are as much invested in the story as anybody else, because they obviously are caring for her and concerned for her because her life is at stake now, and they have to trust Nick Fury and Monica and Carol to make sure that she's going to make it through this safely. So what did you think about just what they brought to the movie, their presence, the comedy, the way also that they were utilized as the story progressed later in the film?
I just like that they were included. This is something different that we do not get in the MCU. We talked about it when we were reviewing Miss Marvel, but we don't get families in the MCU. Everybody got daddy issues. There are no families. Like everybody's
an orphan at this point.
Everybody's an orphan. Everybody's standing on their own, man. Even mama issues too. Thor, Loki, like this crazy mama issues too. And there's never like just a family that we can again kind of go on an adventure on. And I actually love the reasoning there. Kamala's not old. She's literally quite under 18, hasn't graduated high school yet, hopefully soon. But her parents got to go with her. They're her chaperones. Like, it is what it is. So I love that they were included in the story. I love that they were included in the adventure. Again, I felt rewarded for just watching the show too, watching Miss Marvel. Like, oh yeah, I know about her family. And I also love that her family is like, they know Kamala's a superhero now, but they're kind of also like down with the shits now too. Like, it wasn't like most other families would be like, hell no, I ain't going nowhere on nobody's spaceship with nobody. Like, no, like that's not happening. But they were like, shoot, I guess let's go to space with Nick Fury. And so I love that they take the time for the family to do that. I think they were hilarious. Again, usually when they're on screen, they're saying something or doing something funny that I enjoy. That definitely feels like that would come from a family. And then they're always caring about Kamala. Again, that's refreshing from coming from a bunch of heroes who ain't got no moms and dads. They're always like, Beta, are you okay? Beta, what's going on here? Beta. Yes, like that's exactly what would happen. So I love that the family is included. They're very refreshing. I love Maniba the most. It's just something about her motherly presence. It's just that's really great here. And I love her dad too, Yusuf, who's just like eager to be there in the spaceship, but also like dying on the way there. Like, of course, they've never been to those kind of heights. So I love that they still made it feel like a new horizon for the family as well, and that they enjoyed their time on Saber. I thought that was again small shit, but I was like, no, this is pretty cool. I love that they're there. So I hope we continue to see them in more space adventures or something. Like Kamala's family is low key down with the shits, but again, I was just happy they were embedded within the story. I thought they added some funny moments and a little bit of refreshing just from the nature of the story.
Yeah, they're mostly good here, and it makes sense for them to be present because Kamala's gonna be at home when all of this shit is going down. Like she's not gonna be anywhere else except maybe school or something like after school, but like she's gonna be at home. So for the family to all of a sudden become part of the story, I think makes sense, and you get the protective nature that they all are just like overly concerned and overly care about her because they should in this particular moment. If they see fucking Kree alien soldiers appear in their bedroom trying to kill them. It's like, what the fuck? And I love that they get a part of the fight. They get physical. You see them
Oh
grabbing
yeah.
mops and lampposts. It's like, yeah, it's going down. Like you in my house, we about to fucking scrap and bang. And all of that stuff was like really good. One moment I really do love that worked for me. It's when, Carol and Monica are having their moment and you
Mm-hmm.
see that, Monica does have powers and Carol's like, well, when did you get powers? And Monica just runs off the stat sheet. She's like, oh, I can see all wavelengths and in light of the electromagnetic spectrum. And then you hear Maniba like, oh, I'm very happy for you. Now, where's my daughter? Like, fuck what you talking about? Like, where's she at right now? They never lose sight of that. And that was like
Mm-hmm.
a really good moment. The only thing I will say though is that their presence on the Saber space station later in the movie, that
Mm-hmm.
felt a little flimsy to me. Like,
Yeah.
I get them wanting to go just to
Mm-hmm.
obviously like stay very much like on top of like what's happening, to know where their daughter is and to know like what's happening here. But like what they had them doing by the time we got to that point in the movie, like they're just showing cats into the fucking space pod. It's like, okay, now we're just wasting them. Like that's not a real purpose. Cause like after the
Yeah.
phone call that they have where it's like, you're not going to space. And she's like, actually, I am. After
Mm-hmm.
that moment where, Nick Fury and the rest of them kind of promise that they're going to take care of her, their real purpose of the film kind of tapers off at that point. So I think there was a little bit something left to be desired in the later half of it, but for the most part, they kind of showed up and I think did what they needed to do
Mm-hmm.
overall here. So let's move on and sort of get to I think a point of contention for not only us but for a lot of people and talk about the main villain of this movie, Dar-Benn, played by Zawe Ashton, the wife of Tom Hiddleston, by the way, if people don't know,
Mm-hmm.
another like cool
Mm-hmm.
connection, but she is a Cree and she's coming into this film here. And ultimately, we find out, as we've already sort of alluded to, that her whole gripe is the fact that Carol Danvers, aka the Annihilator, showed up to her planet and killed the Supreme Intelligence. And essentially that wiped out many of the resources of her home planet, Hala. It wiped away the air and the sun and the water. And so what this whole plot comes down to is her going to other planets and stealing their resources to really just sort of rejuvenate her home world. And also in addition to that, she essentially wants revenge against Carol, and she needs the bangle to create these jump points in space and time, and that puts her into direct conflict with the Marvels as a team and with Saber. But as a villain, it's one of those things, I think we've already talked about it, where it's like doesn't really work. It's one of those things where the central conceit of it makes sense. You want revenge. You want to get back at the person that caused so much damage to your home world, but the
Mm-hmm.
execution of it just never really seemed like it was there. And also, by the way, I'm not the first person to mention this. It's not an original thought, but I did notice it because I've seen the movie. But her whole plot and her whole storyline is directly ripped off from Spaceballs. Like if you've ever seen Spaceballs, that movie is basically about the villain wanting to steal the air from another planet. It's the same fucking thing. Movies obviously reference each other all the time, but it clearly just ripped it off. And I was just like, all right, now we gotta be a little bit more inventive and creative there. But
Mhm.
let's just get into it. Like, what were your sort of overall thoughts? But beyond what you've already said, like what were some of your other thoughts about Zawe Ashton, her performance, and just the presence of her villain and sort of what she meant to the story.
I actually like Zawe Aston in her a lot of her like facial expressions and emotion. I actually like a lot of it. I thought it was cool that she had like a grill the whole time. I was like, is anybody else seeing this villain with a grill right now? Like this black girl with a hammer in a grill, like trying to conquer the universe. I thought it was crazy. I was like, oh, I
Didn't
don't
know
know
the
what
Kree
movie.
had fucking caps,
Hey,
grilled caps out there in space, but apparently they do.
does she got money being at the position she's in? Like her people can't breathe, but she got a grill, bro. Like
Oh
what's
yeah.
going on? I thought that was crazy. No, everything except the way she was written, I would kind of mess with. Again, if it wasn't for a lot of the Ronin like comparisons, let's say Ronin never existed, right? We never seen Ronin. I wouldn't have minded the hammer. She was like smacking niggas across the universe with the hammer, and you know what I'm saying. I was like, that stuff is fine. It's just, it's all of it really just feels like in there done that sort of thing with her, and we don't get enough. Even if you are gonna do that, at least show us, give us emotional resonance in that moment. Again, part of me wishes this movie started off with the sequence of Brie Larson going back in time, or not, but the sequence of Brie Larson killing Supreme Intelligence, running into Dar-Benn, actually seeing that as a real fleshed out cutscene, what it meant for Dar-Benn, actually watching the world of Hala get stripped of its resources. Like that would have made me at least be like, oh, okay, I see what she's doing. I see the pressure she's under. I see all of these things. I see how she interacts with the rest of the Kree people. We really didn't even really get that, how much she interacts with the rest of the Kree people. It was just like she's the savior and she's gonna do whatever she can for that. So again, I liked most of what she brought to the table, herself as an actress. It really was just like the way she was written. That was weird. And again, I don't even hate the fight scenes either that she was in, to be honest. It was just like, damn, I wish there was something else there. And a lot of times it was more like, I wish the Marvels were intertwined in this fight differently than the way in which she's intertwined in the fight, the way in which she's fighting. I just could have used more in those scenes in general. So it wasn't necessarily her fault. But overall, man, she was fine. Again, I as a villain, poo trash, but as Zawe Ashton in a movie, I was like, yeah, she did what she came to do. I think this also the stealing resources thing is just kind of silly. Like not only Spaceball silly, but it's just like you started getting silly. Up, let's steal the water. Okay, let's still. I don't
Now the
know. I
sun,
don't
check
know.
that off. It's like,
Now
what
the
the fuck?
sun. Maybe if it was like, in fact, it probably would have been more interesting if it was singular. If it was just one thing. If it was just the water. You know what I mean? Let's focus around that. But because she was like going down the line, checking off boxes, it definitely got silly after that point. It was like, and that could have been the inspiration. Spaceballs still in air is kind of, it's gonna be silly to me regardless. Still in air is like just kind of silly in general. But I could see like trying to habitate like the water or the sun. You trying to get one of those resources, I could definitely see that as like the big thing around it. But yeah, it just I feel bad for her because like part of me is like, damn, you didn't stand a chance. You didn't stand a chance. But she just died so fast
Out
as
of
well.
nowhere. Yeah, it was
One
silly.
thing, the one more pain point that I wish they again they could have drove her character home, man, just with some more time. They talked about just the idea of the sun. They like kept talking about the sun. Oh, you sacrifice this for the sun, the sun. I and then she dies and doesn't even get to see. I don't know, man. They just could have did more. Long story short, too bad. She is now in like the lower echelon of whatever heroes are or villains are, unfortunately. But it's not Zawe Ashton's fault. I actually liked her performance quite a bit.
Yeah, bottom rung for sure. Nothing I will say about the character of Dar-Benn is anything personal against Zawe Ashton. I think she's a really, really fine actress and clearly tried to work with the material that was given to her, like most of these performers have to do. But just the way that the character is written and executed here is just so subpar and not to the standards of what we've seen out of villains past. I mean, the MCU is just so damn wishy-washy with the quality of villains that we get. I mean, you can get somebody so excellent like the High Evolutionary just happened this year.
Mm,
You know, I think
yeah.
the one uniformly praised aspect of Quantumania was Jonathan Majors as Kang. Like that's the one thing
Yeah.
that everybody pretty much agreed on was really good. Or
Mhm.
Namor that we just saw debut last year in Wakanda
Yeah.
Forever. Like there's been a recent trend of some super solid villainy in the MCU, and then they remind us that they don't always have the greatest batting average because some of the villains that they have brought to life on screen are some of the most thinly written villains in really any comic book films, you know, regardless of brand or company.
Mhm.
Like they have missed a fair share of these villains, and I think that this is another case of that with Dar-Benn. I just don't ever see anybody talking about this character in any meaningful way in the future, only to put the character on the worst villains in the MCU list. Like that's the only time we're ever going to
Yeah.
reference her character because she comes in, fails at her plot, dies, and that's really it. Like there's no other reason to ever see Dar-Benn again, which is also a shame because like now the MCU is in sort of a spinning pattern of killing their villains, you know, where it's like, oh, we're not going to see them really again. Like you're killing off Killmonger and Mysterio, and like these people are just dying now. Like even the good ones, it's like maybe we shouldn't kill the good ones. You know, maybe we should probably try to hold on to those because like developing these
Yeah.
new ones is somewhat of a challenge occasionally.
Mhm.
But you know, I think that's just one of the unfortunate things. It is like one of the least interesting aspects of this movie, and I think you know at the times I was most interested in her character was when she was just physically fighting the rest of the Marvels because she can kind of hold her own because of the bangle because they don't ever really tell us like how the powers work there, but she's able to hold her own. But all the other stuff and the connection to the Kree home world and everything was just like just not that well done. But that kind of leads into another point because I don't want to harp too long on Dar-Benn in isolation, but in connection with her character, I do want to talk
Mhm.
about the scrolls here because the scroll
Oh,
in this movie,
yes.
and there's
Mhm.
some stuff to address that just kind of
Mhm.
baffles me. It's really perplexing, but one of the big sequences in this movie happens sort of in the midway point, and it's on the planet Tarnax, which come to find out is this scroll refugee colony that exists out there in space. And initially, Dar-Benn shows up and strikes sort of a peace treaty with this colony. But then she decides to destroy this colony once she thinks that they have betrayed her because the Marvels, you know, essentially arrive on this colony. And she's like, oh, what the fuck? Like we just reached an agreement. Now you betrayed me. I'm gonna make everybody suffocate and die, and I'm gonna destroy the planet. And so now this colony is left without a home world. Like most of the scrolls in this damn universe, they're left without a home world. And they have to go elsewhere. Eventually they go to Asgard. We get a a brief appearance from Tessa Thompson. But
Mhm.
there are no connections drawn to Secret Invasion at all. I don't know if they're necessarily needed to be because that's maybe not the show you want to remind people of, but it's a bit of a choice that we don't get any reference or mention of that, and then just also like their presence here, it's kind of weird where they're just like introduced and quickly touched upon, but then they're taken immediately out of the film. They don't have a presence really at all after we see them go to New Asgard, and it just kind of left me perplexed. I was just wondering, like, well, did they really need to be here? They just became cannon fodder. They became
Mhm.
victims of this attack. We do know and see that like a good amount of them die because the Marvels are not able to save everybody off of that colony. But I don't know, man. I just walked away thinking like this whole Kree scroll thing in the MCU is not working for me. I think that that's what it really comes down to. And I
Mhm.
kind of think we're at the place where they should probably abandon this because no project thus far with the Kree or the Scrolls has worked for me in any meaningful way. The first Captain Marvel doesn't do much for me. Secret Invasion damn sure doesn't do anything for me. And now their presence here, I'm just like, okay, but like, what was that for? Was it actually emotional and did I connect with them? But not really. What did you think about just their presence here and how they were affected by Dar-Benn's plan and her plot?
First, the scrolls are the most unlucky people of all time. You're telling me that there's no way they could have known that Captain Marvel was gonna show up and fuck everything up. And they planet their planet gets obliterated like 30 minutes after they just came to a peace treaty, bro. That is so crazy to me. They
Wow.
are so unlucky, bro. They're like oh man, I don't know. That shit fun. Like Eugene from Hey Arnold. They remind
Man,
me of him,
they
man. They're
get
just
bullied around all the
they get
time.
bullied, bro. It's just so unfortunate. But yeah, this is a storyline that, to be honest, the best people that probably do anything with Kree, at least, is like Guardians did some Kree stuff. You know what I'm saying? They're probably the people that do the best with Kree. But man, when it comes to Skrulls and Kree together, it's just not working. And again, part of it is it almost feels like, even though like Marvel cares about them, it almost feels like to a degree Marvel doesn't care about them. Like they never get like the fleshing out that they deserve, or that they need, because it's a huge deal in comics. That's why it's here in the first place. And man, I don't know what they can do to like you said, they just might have to abandon ship on this thing. Shoot, Secret Invasion's already done. I don't even know what else to do after that. That was the best goddamn scroll thing you had going
That's
for
the
you.
story. That's the scroll story to
And
tell.
you
And
fucked it up.
yeah,
You fucked it up. So I don't know what they can do on that front. But there is a small like line in there where Nick Fury is like, oh, this is supposed to be the peace something treaty or whatever. That's kind of Secret Invasion-y. But again, I don't know what they plan to do in the future, because now New Asgard is just a bunch of goddamn scrolls sitting in the middle of New Asgard. I don't know what's going. Like, does the public know that there's scrolls sitting in New Asgard? Because in case you didn't finish Secret Invasion, it's fucking World War III in that bitch, and it is New Asgard should be on fire. Tessa Thompson didn't act like it was on fire. Shit should be on fire on Earth right now. So yeah, that's weird thing happening. But these scrolls, man, I don't know. Part of me just wanted to think that they wanted to acknowledge what did happen in Secret Invasion with scrolls. Oh, let's put scrolls in the story. Let's say Nick Fury. Let's have him have a line. Oh, this is supposed to be a secret treaty. Don't go there. The Annihilator shows up. She didn't even do anything. Annihilator shows up. The world is now destroyed. Like, that is crazy to me that that's how the scrolls were served in this story. And like they never get brought back up again. Maybe this is their going away. Maybe this is like the end of like, maybe there's some scrolls in New Asgard and that's it. That's the end of the story, guys, because clearly the Kree and the scrolls ain't about to make up anytime soon. They just dismantled the whole thing about them potentially having a treaty. Well, Dar-Benn kind of messed it up too. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's a weird story point when it comes to these scrolls. And it's unfortunate. It really is, because they are a really cool part of comics. But maybe it's just one of those things where let's throw them the New Asgard, and maybe later down the line we can figure something out. But I think for now that might have been their way of like sidelining them guys. Like, oh, there's some scrolls on New Asgard. That's all we can do for now.
yeah, it's just a weird disconnect for me, because if you watch Secret Invasion, one of the big plot points of that show is the fact that 1 million Skrulls have secretly been living on Earth because they have nowhere to go.
Where to go?
And you watch the Marvels and they have somewhere to go. They literally have an entire colony out here in the middle of space. Yep. So it's like, what the fuck? Like, is this faction of Skrulls just keeping this secret? Like they just don't want to share this colony that they have. Like, why are 1 million Skrulls displaced on Earth all of a sudden? Unless you were to say that this movie takes place before Secret Invasion, which they never make clear, and I don't think it does. And who knows? If they
I looked it up. I looked it up. It doesn't. This is after Secret Invasion.
So that becomes a plot inconsistency then, where it's like,
yep, plot hole.
Oh, y'all actually had a place to go. At least some of y'all, maybe 1 million people can't fit there. The size of it didn't look all that huge, but still, it just doesn't make sense. And then, as you said, with New Asgard, are we going to see those consequences? The fact that, like, you got some real people on Earth out here looking and attacking Skrulls, like they're out here trying to murder them and kill them in the middle of the street. Well, New Asgard is a public place. There's tourism in New Asgard. We saw that in Thor: Love and Thunder. It's like this open oasis that you can go visit, like fucking Disney World. So if there's going to be some people that go, they're going to be like, yo, what? Y'all are harboring Skrulls here? Oh no, I'm not having that. Like, we're about to deal with this. Like, is that going to be something that they pick up? I seriously doubt it. And I don't even know if I want them to. I'm just bringing it up as a point of just the overall lack of consistency that it feels like between some of these projects where they're not speaking to each other. And I just looked at the Skrulls in this movie and I'm just like, well, wait, this isn't adding up with what you've already told us. Like, there's something that's just not connecting the dots here for me. And speaking of not connecting the dots, I mean, we should already just talk about them since we're here. and move on to the next character. But that's Samuel L. Jackson coming in as Nick Fury once again. This is like, I don't know, his 57th million appearance in the MCU. He's here. He's a mainstay, obviously. But I guess the overall importance of him is really, sort of the connection to Saber. He's
Mhm.
obviously sort of residing on the space station, which, the one thing that they do can keep consistent from Secret Invasion is the fact that he goes back to Earth, all hell breaks loose, and then he leaves Earth and goes back onto the space station. And so we find him here again. But he's largely interacting with obviously the three Marvels because of his connection with both Carol and Monica. And then, by proxy, later on, Kamala Khan and her family. And he's sort of
Mhm.
overseeing them and bringing them to the Saber space station to make sure that they're protected and ensuring that they can keep a watch on her daughter. But I don't know, man. Doesn't seem like the same Nick Fury to me from the show we just watched like 2 months ago. That real guilt laden, that troubled and conflicted Nick Fury that was present in Secret Invasion. I mean, he's largely absent here because I mean Samuel Jackson, he's cracking a lot of jokes and sometimes he's funny. I gotta admit that sometimes he's funny, but I don't
Mhm.
know. It was one of those things where I was just like, yo, this is like not the same person at all. Like, did he go
Mhm.
through anything we just watched on the show? I don't know. Did that bother you at all? Was that something that stood out to you? And overall, what were your thoughts on just what Samuel L. Jackson contributed to this movie?
I think they need to just backtrack and say this happened before Secret Invasion, bro. Either that or just delete Secret Invasion. One of the two.
I'll
I
go
know.
with
Even
delete. I'll take that
I
version.
like the delete button. Yeah, I like the delete button because I agree, man. He didn't seem like the same person. In fact, you know I know this movie is supposed to be more vibrant because of Vellani's in it. You know what I mean? And the other Marvels are part of the team. But I agree. He should have been a way darker, like Nick Fury at this point, right? He just lost Talos. Literally the United States is in peril. Like you just found out what is supposed to be one of your close friends, and James Rhodes is not who you thought he was the whole time. Like
Bro, his wife, they had a
his
rocky
wife,
situation. Like, come on,
this
bro.
Nick Fury should be fucked up right now. Like he should be in another place, like in his mind. So again, part of me almost wants them to just come out with a statement like, "Oh yeah, this movie happens before Secret Invasion," because that would literally fix everything. To be honest, like, or Secret Invasion is no longer canon. I would love to hear that. Yes, let's go with that one. But yeah, outside of all of that, he was fun. He was a good time. I thought, like you said, he was really funny. The moment where Carol's about to hit the ground, or they're trying to get Mavalati, it's like the funniest part of the movie for me. I could not stop laughing. It was the comedic timing was perfect. He was like, "Oh yeah, it's just Carol." I
Oh, that's
was
cool. It's just Carol.
dying. Oh, it's, cool. It's just I was dying. It was really good comedic timing, and again, he's always fun in the movie. He's always fun. I just wish we had some more continuity sometimes when it came to Nick Fury, and especially again, he is a big character in the first Captain Marvel. He really is, and it feels like him and not enough time. It's too many characters and not enough time, man. But him and Captain Marvel don't really get a lot of time to shoot the shit. You know what I'm saying? It was like a whole force. You know what I mean? And it's they couldn't have seen each other that much within that time period. You know, they couldn't have. And so it's like, I don't know. There's more there too that they just can't touch on. There's not enough time to do it. So yeah, it's I enjoy him in the movie. I think he's still great, but he also with a whole character, as you said, has been in umpteenth 11 13,000 times in these movies, just didn't have enough to chew on as a character in this big project. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, he's really reduced to just comedic delivery and levity, which, Samuel L. Jackson, he's going to knock that out of the park. He's really good. He's
Every
really, really
time.
funny, and so most of his lines I enjoyed. I do find it interesting. He simultaneously had maybe the best line of the movie with "All cool is just Carol," and the
Hilarious.
worst, most cringe line of the movie. I'm not a
Oh, Black Girl
fan
Magic.
of the
Yep.
black girl magic. That just doesn't work. Like we're
It
we're
didn't
we're
work.
we're trying too hard.
Yeah.
It's just too cringe. But beyond that, I mean, he's not doing a ton here. The inconsistency is it's really jarring if you did watch Secret Invasion and I think that there's a little bit more to do for Nick Fury in this type of setting, as you said, because he does have such a strong relationship with Carol. They briefly touched on it at the beginning. He's kind of coaching her. He's like, why are you
Mhm.
touching shit? Like, don't touch shit. Like don't do that. Like, I like
Yeah.
stuff like that. They can be
Hmm.
playful with each other, but we needed more of that. And due to the
Hmm.
fact that this does take place after Secret Invasion, like, shouldn't he be talking about Talos to Carol? Like, Carol knew who Talos was.
Mm.
Monica knew who Talos was. Like, she met him like Talos was in her home when she was a young girl. Like all of them had time and opportunity that they spent together in that first movie, and none of those threads were carried over and talked about in this
Yeah.
film. I don't know. Maybe they just chucked it up to the fact that it would have been too much. You know, maybe they were fearful that audience members would have had to watch 3 shows before the Marvels instead of 2, which, you know, I don't know. You make your bed, you sleep in it. Like if you're gonna fucking double
Yeah.
down, then just double down
Might
and
as
just say, like,
well.
yeah, you might as well. Like we're already here. I just found it really, really weird, you know, that whole decision. And by the end of it, you know, he's helping the parents just shoot cats onto the space station, which we'll get back to. But this movie takes, you know, two really big creative swings. You know, we talked about the majority of the characters here, but I want to talk about, you know, a couple of things before we move on to the final moments. There's one sequence and one planet that we visit in this movie. The planet it's called Alatna, I believe.
Mhm.
Essentially they have to go here um to really, you know, sort of lure Dar-Benn in to try to, you know, thwart her plan. And Carol has connections to this planet Aladna because Dar-Benn's going to go there and try to steal their water, essentially, because Carol has had a previous life there. She realizes, like,
Mhm.
oh, Dar-Benn is targeting places that I've called home. So they go to Aladna, and we find out that this is a singing only planet. And not only that, Carol has engaged in a consensual, but I guess, what do we call it? A manufactured marriage, a marriage out of
Yeah.
convenience. That's really what it's
Mhm.
all about. She's married essentially the king of this planet, but it's a singing only planet. And so once they arrive, their only way to communicate is by song and through song. And they engage in this whole mini musical slash
Mhm.
Bollywood esque section. This was one of those creative swings that you could tell, like, oh, this is either going to totally work for you or it's not going to work at all. What side do you fall on, you know, once we arrived at this particular point of the movie, once you realize, like, oh yeah, this whole population can't do nothing but sing and dance, and so we have to kind of deal with this for like the next 7 or 8 minutes throughout the movie.
A swing is right. Because I also did not see this coming like at all. I could not have predicted that this would be in the film. And you know, to be honest, this would work for me if the other parts of the movie worked better, if that makes sense. Like I just got to this part of the film, and I was like, I like this swing, and I actually don't hate the things that are happening. There's even that funny joke in there about the prince being able to speak bilingual. I like that joke. That's a good joke. But there's like a there was already some things that were kind of taking me not necessarily out of the movie, but I was just like, I don't know how I feel about that. And then you kind of added this on top of it, and I was like, I would have liked this a little bit better had some other things tied together a little bit better. I'd be like, okay, now it's time to have fun, but that base wasn't set up for me to be like, oh yeah, I'm in this thing, I'm having a great time. Which again, I actually don't mind the city. I actually like a Latin. I like the idea, like the people have to sing, but it just didn't fit the film how I would have hoped it would have fit. Again, not knowing it was coming at all. So it was fine for me. And I think this is one of those parts of the movie where I was like, damn, we are off the rails. Like, where did we just go? Like, there was one movie happening, y'all just put us in a whole a whole nother movie. And again, for that, it just doesn't work how I wanted it to, though I like the swing and though I like the ideas, man. So yeah, that's kind of where I fell on it.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but I was like, can we please get the fuck out of here ASAP? Like I was not really vibing with it. Like
Mhm.
initially when they said, "Oh, they can only sing. That's the only way that they communicate." I was like, "Oh, that's interesting and different. That's new." And then just the execution of it was like, "Okay, like why did we
I
need to
guess.
do this?" I guess
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
apparently the scene was a lot longer as well, and was cut down significantly. Allegedly it didn't test well, which, shocker, I'm sure it didn't, because it's not really executed all that great. I mean, I'm glad that they cut it down, because anything longer than what it was would have been probably unbearable. The one good thing that comes out of it is the fact that Carol, Monica, and Kamala get new costumes. Like that's a cool thing. They all get like
Mm.
these new looks, these new outfits to go into the final fight. But beyond that, it's just like I don't know. This is just weird territory that's not really landing. The people are just dancing all over the place, and then they kind of do this
Mhm.
whole Disney princess thing where Carol just like magically pops up in a dress and has a dance number with the king, and
However the hell that's possible.
how that
Yeah.
happened, it's like, oh, okay, that just came out of nowhere. It's like they just wanted to make Captain Marvel into a Disney princess. I learned that Brie Larson can sing. I didn't know that. That's I guess a nice revelation,
That's
but
true.
she's a pretty good
Yeah.
singer. But beyond that, I'm just like, okay, we got to get out of here. Um, I, well, I guess what I also want to say too about sort of the swings in this movie is it's not the only one, because like the next one that comes is it's an even bigger swing. And again, I think your mileage may vary. The one thing that I was going to say before that one though is that I don't know, it feels like Marvel might be kind of spinning their wheels with some of these sequences, because phase 4,
Mm.
phase 5, it feels like we're getting a lot more of like these strange things. Like a lot of people in Thor Love and Thunder, they look at that Olympia sequence as like that's kind of the breaking point. Like when you get to Olympia, that either
Hmm.
works for you or it doesn't work for you. When you got fucking Russell Crowe just acting out his ass, like just doing the strangest shit, it kind of maybe throws you off the rails. I think maybe even
Hmm.
in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the whole Illuminati stuff, when that goes down, that kind of
Yeah.
divides people. It seems like more of these movies, maybe it's
Hmm.
just like by a product of the formula. Maybe they're just like really trying to go there and like really try
Hmm.
to be creative and do stuff different and fresh. She-Hulk has a number of these sequences, like more than
That's
one
true.
in the show. I mean, what are your thoughts just about that? Because I don't really recall stuff happening like this in the first few phases, like where it's like these
Yeah.
sequences specifically that
Hmm.
divides fans, where it's like, oh, it was that moment specifically in the movie that lost me. What do you think about just sort of this new, seemingly this new trend that's been developing?
Yeah, that's really interesting that you brought that up. I never thought about how recent kind of that trend had been. But I what I will say is I think a lot of times they're missing some of these sequences and some of these swings because it doesn't feel like it's in the interest of the movie per se. Does that make sense? For instance, Thor: Love and Thunder, you talk about the Olympus stuff. Ooh, I mean, I can see like somebody watching it like, oh, I don't know if this works for me. But then you go to whatever planet they were on, the moon, whatever, black and white sequence, right? Where it's like, oh, this shit is kind of crazy. Like, what's going on? That works for the movie. One works for the movie tonally because Gore the fucking God Butcher's in the movie. Black and white makes sense versus this colorful whatever is happening on Olympia. It's just yeah, it just doesn't work as well. And so I can see where some of these things are working and where some of these things aren't necessarily working. And I'm all for a swing, but again, it has to be in service of the story and of the character. And maybe people don't consider that a swing, but there's ways to do it, right? There's ways to like I don't know, like, oh, we've never done this before, but it still makes sense. And I think a lot of times it's like, it's not making sense. The reasons in which we're doing it. In this case, talking about what is it called? Aladdin Land, Aladdin,
Aladdin, whatever,
man, Disney World. In this case of Disney World, there's like a there's it almost feels like because this is such a crazy galactic adventure, they needed to like throw in something that felt like that. A crazy galactic adventure.
Let's just
But
throw in
like
one more planet just to just to
one more
just to go
planet.
somewhere else.
Exactly. Instead of, I've talked multiple times on this podcast about spending time in other places that you could, you know what I mean, take some time, flesh out some characters, do some other things. They had to go to Disney World instead. And so I again, I part of me doesn't want them to stop it, if that makes sense, because part of me likes that idea. I just feel like they need to do more research before they decide to swing, if that makes sense. They're like, I think there's a such thing as a calculator risk, and it feels like they're not calculating them as much as they should be, if that makes sense. And yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. Some people would be like, "Oh, it's risk aren't calculated," but you get what I'm trying to say, though. There's definitely calculated risk, and so I just think they should make some more of those decisions. It feels like they're not being done here, and so yeah, that's a very interesting trend, though, that you brought that up
Yeah, and by the way, too, like I'm all for silly and playful. Like this is comic books at the end of the day. There are silly and
for
playful
sure.
things, but there's a difference between being silly and playful, but doing that and it just being pointless and nonsensical. And I think to what you just said, like if you're going to have like these more playful elements, these more creative risks, like as long as it actually furthers the story and it makes sense to the plot and to pushing the narrative forward, then it
Mhm.
can be okay. It might not work for everybody, but at least like it really makes sense. Like truly the only purpose they went to this planet is because Dar-Benn had been targeting it to steal their water. All right, cool. But why is it a singing planet exactly? Like, did we need that? Or did you just want to come up with this random dance and song number for whatever purpose that it truly didn't need to be there because it doesn't do anything for
Mhm.
anybody, any of the characters. Like Carol being able to sing and speak with the people there doesn't tell us anything about her. That doesn't like it doesn't do anything. It's just like it's just kind of there, and she just dresses up in this Disney princess outfit just because. Like I don't know. I mean, maybe if they harped on the fame a little bit more, the fact that she's like famous across the galaxy, because they did allude to
Mhm.
that. She's like, I'm kind of famous here, and they're like, you're famous everywhere. They slightly touch on that because like the whole planet is like bowing at her feet, but I don't know. It's just one of those things where I guess if you go down this route again, you make the bed that you sleep in. They're gonna double down, more on these things as they get deeper really
Mhm.
into the comics, and it might just be a situation and a matter of certain stuff is gonna work for certain people and other things just won't for a certain demographic. But the other one is really this big Saber escape with the Flurkins, who are not cats by the way, but they have to evacuate Saber, and the only way that they can really achieve this, because there's too many people on board and not enough escape pods. Apparently, there's 350 agents and workers, and they only have like 10 or 15 escape pods. So what they instead decide to do is use the Flurkins to eat everybody, and then all you have to do is to transport these, I don't know, 20, 25 small kitten Flurkins. You just have to transport them because they've eaten all the passengers and all the crew members to get them to Earth. I will say first and foremost, I laughed in the sequence. Like it was funny to me. It actually, this is the one that
Mhm.
works better for me. I guess I'm also confused about Flurkins and like what they actually do here. Like, are they
Yeah.
really eating people, or are they just like? Apparently, somebody said that they transport them to like another dimension or another universe. Like, is that
Yeah.
a thing that happens too?
They have like voids in them, and that's where the people go.
Okay, all right. Well, that I guess that makes sense. What? That
Yeah.
sounds fucking terrifying though. Like,
That sounds
damn,
hella
like
scary.
that sounds like what? Like I see why everybody was running on the ship and didn't want to be eaten. But I don't know. What did you think about this sequence? Especially with the music in the background, which was like super bizarre, that they had this operatic music and that they were eating all the crew members. How did you feel about this whole sequence?
No, this was the swing that worked for me. I thought it was hilarious, to be honest. In fact, before they even like conjure up the plan, I was like, I know exactly what's about to go down. As soon as I seen all them damn flirkins, I was like, yeah, I know exactly what's going to happen. But I think they kept it short. I think they kept it funny. Amon Villani walking around this damn cat pointed at people was pretty funny, and people running. I was like, yeah, these are funny moments. The only thing is, I do wish they did explain Flurkins a little bit more. Even that conversation we just had, it's like, what do they do? Like, do they ever? Thing is about Flurkins, do they ever digest anything they eat? Like,
That's a good
like where
question that I was thinking
is
about. Yeah.
where's the chair that Goose ate in the house? Where did it go? Are we ever going to see that chair again? Like, where are they cognitive enough to where they can digest some things and throw up other things? You know what I mean? Like maybe they knew, oh, these are all crew members, we have to throw them up versus like keeping it down. I don't know. They're really weird creatures. So I wish there was, especially there was like multiple saber scientists on the ship. You know what I mean? Give us a quick line like, oh, Flurkins can do this thing, and this is why they're able to do this. I would have loved the quick line and be like, oh yeah, cool, bet. But it is what it is. But I like the sequence. I thought it was funny. The cats they used were adorable. It was just another moment for them to. I'm sure they're selling cats somewhere. These Marvel
Selling
plushies
eggs, apparently. AMC,
selling the oh
them damn
AMC.
egg baskets, which is just so if you don't see the movie, you have no fucking idea what those represent, what those mean.
No, it's insane. They're literally trying to sell eggs, flirking eggs before you walk into the movie. How are you supposed to know what that is? Like, it's so crazy.
Great marketing.
But one other thing, I think it would have been cool for them to like use this idea of like family as just a bigger message in the movie. Of course, it's like supposed to be a thing, but it was like oh, even the cat's having babies. Like, part of me is like, should this like bring home some lesson about family? Like, I don't know. I thought there was something else there. They never really make a tie, but yeah, I thought that was kind of missing too. Of like this overarching it's family everywhere in this movie. Why aren't we talking about this too?
Yeah, it's a strange sequence, but it is funny. I did laugh and it worked for me. And I agree totally that they kept it short. It didn't drag on too long because
Exactly.
if it went on a little bit too much longer, it's like, all right, yeah, y'all are doing the same gag over and over. One of like the low key funniest moments of it is like the one like black saber worker with like the crazy beard. He
Yeah,
like
you got the
dove in like he was about to dive into a fucking swimming pool. He like covered his nose and just like leaned back and let the flurkin eat him. It's like he
he
was ready.
knew.
Everybody else wasn't ready, but he knew where he was
He
going.
knew. Yeah.
That was like a nice subtle moment. I like that. I like both of the saber workers, the girl worker.
Yeah, they
I'm
both.
not
I think we'll see them again. I think we'll see
I
them again.
would, yeah, I would like to see them again. I think that they were cool. You know, they were like the right hand people of Nick Fury on the ship. Like they were kind of communicating a lot of the dialogue when it came to Saber. It was also the cool moment earlier, like Yusuf explaining a retirement plan to the
Oh
black one.
yeah,
Like, you know, it's
the
never too late.
Roth
Yeah.
IRA and
Yeah,
shit.
like talking about all this technical stuff is so random, but it was good stuff. And he's like, "Oh, I'm 306." So good stuff
Crazy.
there. But you know, overall, again, I think both of these sequences, like the two biggest creative swings, your mileage is going to vary on whether or not you enjoy them,
Mhm.
just based on how they're executed. That kind of brings us to like the final moments of the movie. We do get a showdown between Dar-Benn and the Marvels. They're able to track her down, but it's a really short fight. It's not much that really happens here. You do get a
Mhm.
moment where it seems like they're able to bargain with her. You know, she's almost fatally wounded due to some debris falling, and Carol and Monica and Kamala, they're trying to reason with her, like, Carol, you're powerful enough. You could go rejuvenate and restore their son. Like, this is not a lost cause at this point. Be who you're meant to be, and change that narrative about you being an annihilator. And Carol agrees. She's willing to do that, and they think that Dar-Benn is going to work for them, but instead she's like, nah, fuck that. Like, I still got hands for you. But she's a
Mhm.
little bit too headstrong. She gets both bangles, gets destroyed and evaporates very, very quickly. And that's kind of it for Dar-Benn. It's kind of in and out. Before we talk about like Monica's specific piece here, like any thoughts on like
Mhm.
just the final fight and just like the final sort of moments of Dar-Benn in the movie?
Not a lot of thoughts, man. Just she almost went out how she came in, bro. Not with a lot. Like it's there's no way they thought I was gonna care when she went disappearing the way she did after she smacked them bangles together. I was like, well, you reap what you sow. That's what I thought in my mind. Cause that girl was tripping. But yeah, that's really it. Again, I just wish it was all deeper. I really do. But it wasn't. It was just like, dang, she's in and out. Yeah, that's I don't have anything to
It's kind of it.
add. That's it.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty underwhelming sequence. Like, you know, we've been critical of third acts. This
Yeah.
unfortunately is going to fall right in that narrative, I think. But at
Mhm.
least with some of the third acts, you could look at the action and be like, well, the action was really, really good here. Like, I'm
Mhm.
critical of the third act of Shang-Chi because it just goes like really far. Like, there's
Mhm.
dragons and shit. But I love that fight between Wen-Wu and Shang-Chi, like father
Yeah,
and
that's a
son.
good
Like,
fight.
it's a good
Mhm.
fight. They duke it out. Great choreography. At least you got that. I can't even say that about this one. It's just like a nothing fight. And as you said, the action sequence earlier
They
was kind of
peaked.
the peak of the film, where you see them switching unknowingly, and not even like experts at how their power switching works. Like, that's a better sequence. And it's a shame because there's that whole montage in the middle of the movie where they're practicing the power
Mhm.
switching abilities, which I think is a pretty good sequence. You see them juggling, you see the double dutch stuff, which I thought that was a nice touch, because like
Mhm.
black people double dutch when we grew up. So that
That's what
that
we
felt like
do.
a
Yeah.
specific call out to that. And women, young girls double dutch. That's like a
Mhm.
specific thing. But I didn't get the sense or the feeling like that they were actively like using that to their advantage. Like, you don't really see them switching all that much in this fight. Like, it happens a couple times, but it wasn't this thing that was like really, really emphasized in this moment, again, because the sequence was just
Yeah.
so quick, it goes away so
Mhm.
fast, and then you're kind of, you're done with it, and you
I
dispose of Dar-Benn.
yeah, I thought there would be like when Dar-Benn gets the other bangle, I thought she would like have some crazy ass powers to level her up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when she gets it, it doesn't really feel like beyond taking resources from other planets that her as a like being leveled up in terms of how scary she was as an opponent, which would then make the Marvels have to use their newfound switching power thing and make the last fight cool. I was very excited to see how that was going to go, and it was just not it. They didn't go that direction. So yeah, that's kind of how I felt.
For sure. Then it's followed up the Bengals and Dar-Benn, essentially exploding and evaporating. It rips a hole in space and time, so we now have sight of a parallel universe, and they realize like, oh my God, it's all coming apart. This particular jump point. And so Monica decides to essentially sacrifice herself. She can use the power from both Carol and the two Bengals that Kamala has to sort of provide, more additional power to her so that she can go and close this particular rip in space and time. And so they hatch up this really quick plan, haphazardly. Monica goes and she goes on the other side to start to close the jump point. And knowingly to her, she realizes like, I'm not going to be able to come back from this. Like I have to stay here to hold it all together. I can't be saved. But Carol tries to take the moment to save her, and she jumps off of the ship and extends her hand and reaches out to her, but it's too little too late. Monica has now been trapped on a different universe entirely, a parallel universe entirely. And then Carol, sort of proceeds back to the ship and embraces Kamala. They realize like what they've lost in the moment. How did you feel about just, sort of that power display, seeing Monica sort of elevate to a new level, very quickly there, get even more power because of both Carol and Kamala. And also the fact that like now their powers were no longer intertwined, they could all use them simultaneously. But then, the result of all of this is the fact that Monica ends up on a different universe entirely, and is left, without her comrades, I guess.
There was that quick look from Captain Marvel when she finds out that they're not intertwined anymore, of like sadness. We never really get to talk about that sadness, unfortunately. I was like, dang, why is she so sad? Because it's like, again, she was alone. I don't know, man. There's so much they could have talked about in this movie. But man, Monica Rambeau, I actually love seeing this sequence just because just realizing how cool of a character she even, just beyond everything, the way she looks in comics is really cool. Like if you look at the way she's drawn, her light powers and everything, she's just like really dope looking. Just this black girl with these like crazy eyes. And I even like how they were when they were on Disney World. I'm gonna keep calling it Disney World. When they're on Disney World, how they even made a quick tribute to one of her old costumes with the little loopy loops in the back. And she was like, the drapes, yeah. And she was like, yeah, I think I can do without these, or whatever she said. I was like, yeah, that was tight. Like somebody actually knew what she used to look like and decided to talk about it really fast. But here, man, it was like a moment that she's finally fully realized of this is who Monica Rambeau is supposed to be. The reason it gets shortcut for me is because she's making a sacrifice, but she's still not fighting anything. Like I want her to whoop ass. I don't think y'all understand. This is superhero content. I'm always looking for these people to fight and whoop ass. That's what a lot of us are here for. That's what makes Endgame, Infinity War. Infinity War is fighting and action sequences, and that shit is cool. And Monica's like, yes, she finally leveled up to the Monica Rambeau we know her to be in the comics. We still don't got a name for her. We still don't know if it's Spectrum or Photon or the Sun Goddess or whatever the hell she's supposed to be. But you can see the glow in her eyes. That's like a very particular thing with her character, right? Of Spectrum / Photon is the glow in her eyes. You can see her sparkling. You see her, the aura around her. And then she just goes and has to sacrifice herself. It's just like, damn, I wish she could have like pulled up on Dar-Benn like this. You know what I'm saying? Like, damn, that's what I'm here to see. And I still don't get to see it. So I still love the moment. I still love like the, oh wow, this woman is amazing kind of moment. But man, I wish we got to see her throw some hands.
Yeah, it needed to go further. Like you want to see that in action. It's definitely something that I think, if you're a big fan of Monica Rambeau and you wanted to see what she was capable of and see that potential realized, you feel shortchanged. It's like, oh well, now she's just gone. And I think even more disappointing than that for me is when she makes the sacrifice and you see that Carol isn't fast enough to save her, and you see that distraught look on her face. She goes back to the ship, and her and Kamala just hug, and that was it. That was all. I felt like there was a great opportunity there to show like a real emotionally powerful scene. Like Carol could have really just like broken down, like all of the stuff that she's been carrying, like the guilt, not being there for her, not living up to this image, lost her again. Like that could have been like a really great opportunity for Brie Larson to show that she's a great actress. Like Brie Larson is an excellent performer. If you've seen her
Facts.
outside of this big budget shit, you
What?
know she's capable. And
What?
we just never get the chance to see her like actually like really
Mhm.
truly act. Like we can be honest about it. Like we know that
Yeah.
there's limitations in this type of stuff. And there's only a
Hmm.
few small moments to where I think you can allow like an actor to really showcase their chops. And I think that this could have been a moment to do that, but they just hug and all of a sudden we're back on Earth. You know, we see Kamala come back and then she just bounces and goes to rejuvenate the sun on Hala, and that's it. You know, it's just like really quickly just done and rushed and just again a missed opportunity. It's like wow, we I think as an audience could have felt this emotionally heavy moment to really understand the gravitas of
Hmm.
losing Monica and Carol's loss, like
Exactly.
Maria as well. It's like this stuff should mean something, and it didn't feel like it really meant that much in that particular moment. So I was let down
Very
by
well
that.
said.
I was just like, wow, there was much more that could have been done here. Um, that brings us to the very final moments of the movie. We see that, and I'm not clear on this, so maybe you know better than me. Is it Kamala's family moving to Louisiana, or is it Carol taking the house that Maria maybe left to? I didn't feel like it was
Yeah.
clearly said to me. I assume it's probably Kamala's family, but then I was like, why are they leaving Jersey City? That's so important to her character. That's so integral.
Hmm.
Why the fuck would they move to Louisiana of all places? It didn't really, I don't know, it didn't register for me.
No, it's not clear to me either. Because especially there's the moment where she like pulls out the dish that Brie Larson and the prince and she's on.
Yes.
She's like, oh, you can have it. I'm like, but what is that like? Why is that even there? So part of me thinks Brie Larson is moving into that house. I think that's the conclusion we're supposed to make,
Okay.
especially because she can't leave her friends. Remember, Kamala Khan got friends up there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
given her going to see old girl, I think she's still in Jersey City. I think they were helping Miss Marvel move in to her house, but because she lost the other piece of family she got with Lieutenant Trouble, that's the only people that can help move her in is Kamala's family. So I think that's what's
Sure.
happening.
Yeah. And, I think what confused me is the fact that, earlier in the movie, the Khan's family house got destroyed. Like
It's
it was fucking
destroyed. No, I'm
ruined.
with you.
And
I'm
they
with
and
you. Yeah.
and they leaned into that, but that's never resolved. Like they just bounce and go to Saber, and we never
Mm-hmm.
see like what becomes of their house.
It's
And so you see
confusing.
like all of these U-Haul it's like, how does Carol have so much shit? Like, where did she get all this stuff from? I know she got a spaceship, but like there's a lot of U-Haul boxes, y'all. It
A
seemed
lot of
like that
U-Haul boxes.
it seemed like they were taking a lot of stuff. And so for a second, I thought they're like, why are they moving to Louisiana of all places like that? And
It
but
didn't make sense. Yeah.
I think you're making good points. Like, okay, Kamala does have like a whole life, school, friends, like in
Mm-hmm.
Jersey. Like it wouldn't make any sense to move her from that environment, But for a second there, I was kind of questioning that. But the very next scene, which is interesting that it's the end of the movie because it also could have served as like a post credit scene, really. But the end of the movie, is a playful tease. We see Kamala all of a sudden has a new idea and she's like found a new purpose. And apparently, what it looks like moving forward is that her new purpose may be assembling what will ultimately become the Young Avengers. And they directly point to that because she's able to track down Kate Bishop and go to her apartment. And maybe that reinforces that it is Carol moving in because they go back to New York. We know Kate's in New York,
Mm-hmm.
Kamala's in Jersey.
Exactly.
That's a pretty close commute. So you're probably right. But she tracks down Kate Bishop and she's in her apartment. She's sitting there in darkness, just like Nick Fury was at the beginning of Iron Man 1, or at least in the post-credit scene of Iron Man 1 when he somehow infiltrated Tony Stark's mansion. And she basically recites verbatim what Nick Fury told Tony Stark. You are a part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet. I'm here to, recruit you for a team. She doesn't say Young Avengers, but we obviously know what it is. She
Yeah.
also calls out the fact like, oh, did you know Ant-Man has a daughter too? So it
Mm-hmm.
looks like we have our first three members of potentially a Young Avengers team, which, are three traditional core members of that team in the comics: Kate
Mm-hmm.
Bishop, Kamala Khan, and I guess
Cassie Lang.
Cassie Lang as well. And so, how did you feel about this? I mean, I feel like we've been trying to call for this for a really long time because damn near every MCU project since Endgame has introduced some new kid in their movie or their TV show, and it looks like that they might potentially be finally ready to pull that trigger on a Young Avengers team up movie or TV show.
Oh man, I mean they were running out of time. Everybody's getting older. They even like Kate Bishop is like, I'm 23, right? I'm like, I'm happy they put that in there because it's like it's almost like younger Avengers is what they're going to end up being by the end of all this, because that's real. But man, no, I'm happy that they're finally putting this into action, man. Because anybody who knows the Secret Wars story, I'm not going to spoil anything crazy for you, but just know Young Avengers is a very integral part of that story, and they have a really big opportunity to make this cool as shit. To be honest, we talk about peaks and highs in Marvel and things that could happen. Young Avengers could really do some. They could put some stuff on the map if done right within the MCU. And a lot of this has been, what are we doing? Where are we going? Even by way of Secret Wars, is like stuff isn't going down yet. Like we're not that far away. Like time is ticking. What are we doing? And to be honest, this is one of the earliest, beyond some Loki stuff, right? This is one of the earliest, like, oh, things are moving forward potentially with the Secret Wars story in this way. So I was actually really happy to see this. I was really refreshed. I literally have a list of all the Young Avengers. I've been writing it down since, like, for years, bro. Every time they introduce a potential Young Avenger, I write it down. Like,
It's
I got
been years for sure.
Kamala Khan, Kate Bishop. Now I moved them to the top. Axel, Eli Bradley, America Chavez, Cassie Lang, Love, Wiccan, Speed, Kid Loki, Ironheart, and Phyla Vale.
That's a lot.
That's
Yeah,
that's
already.
a
Yeah.
lot of kids that they just in the wind, just in the wind of the MCU. Like, what are we doing with them? And so again, hopefully this is like one of those things where we don't have to spend like a ton of time, right, introducing each character. I don't need a fucking kid Wiccan and Love movie. But hopefully this is like a, okay, this thing is intact and this thing is happening finally. So I'm glad to say Young Avengers is finally happening. It's really cool that it start with 3 girls. I think that's kind of dope. I didn't see that coming. I was like, oh shit. They said they threw Cassie Lang in there too. I was like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. So I think that's really cool direction they're going in. And again, overall, hopefully they're just prepared to follow up on this. You know what I mean? Like, this is low-key a big deal. And it's a pretty big pre-credit scene, I guess. It's the end of the movie, but it's not post-credit or anything. Pre-credit scene. So hopefully they take this seriously, man. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, it's about time they specifically call it out. We've suspected it because they have introduced so many of these characters, but it is about time that they just like actively point to it, that this is moving ahead. And as you said, without getting too deep into the storyline of how they're important to Secret Wars, I mean, one of the reasons that Young Avengers is born is due to the absence of the Avengers themselves. And
Yep, exactly.
we have been without the Avengers for the past 4 going on 5 years now. I keep asking, like, where the fuck are they? Like, what are we doing? And so if we're actively leaning into that idea that, like, okay, this younger team of heroes needs to assemble because, like, where the OGs at? Like, where's Cap? Where's Thor? Where's Hulk? Like, then okay, again, that makes sense. It can service the larger story. I am curious to see who exactly is a part of that team, because I think you ran down a lot of names. I don't know if everybody's going to make it. We obviously
Not everybody.
we see the primary 3, but it'll be interesting to see who they choose, and when the actually will pull the trigger on this, because a case can be made, maybe Ironheart has something to do with it. A case can be made that the next Captain America, like, is there going to be additional tie in there because of Patriot, might be a part of that. I don't know. So I think that there's definitely more roadmap to what this could look like, but again, we are pretty far along, so they kind of they have to move fast.
Yep.
And whether or not it's a movie or TV show, I'm still curious about that too. Like, I don't know. I don't
I
even
don't
know what
know.
makes sense. I don't even know,
Yeah,
like, what's a
that's a
better
hard one.
medium. It's hard
That's a
because
hard one.
we haven't gotten too much in the way of what the scope of it is supposed to be.
That's
So
true.
that'll be interesting. But that leads us to the mid credit tag. There's only one. There's not a post credit, but there is a mid credit tag. And if you were able to avoid spoilers, this might have been a nice surprise for you. But this definitely did leak ahead of the movie. It's all over the internet. But essentially, we see where Monica ends up, and she ends up in a parallel universe. She's in a medical facility, and before we really understand and know where she's at, she sees what she thinks is her mother, Maria Rambeau, sitting next to her bedside asleep, and she calls her like, "Mom, I've missed you so much." She gets super emotional, as you would expect her to. I actually think Tiana Paris did a great job communicating what this would feel like in this particular moment. But we all know it's not really Maria. It's somebody else. It's somebody that looks like her mom exactly, but this is a different universe entirely. And it turns out she is in the medical facility in the X-Man mansion, in the bowels of the X-Man mansion, and right after we see that's not her mom, that's not the Maria Rambeau that she knows. We see Beast from the X-Men, but not just any Beast. It's Kelsey Grammer's Beast.
Very specific Beast.
A very specific one from the Fox X-Men movies. He first appeared in X-Men: The Last Stand, also had another appearance in Days of Future Past, and they talk and have a little bit of conversation about where she comes from, what's going on here. And then we also get Beast referencing Charles Xavier and letting him know like what's going on here. And then they show the full costume of Maria Rambeau, which is, it's clearly the costume of the hero Binary, which is another, sort of interpretation and version of Captain Marvel. And so that appears to be what she's representing in this particular universe. And so all signs point to mutants and X-Men and I guess presumably the Fox X-Men that we grew up with, not necessarily a new iteration of the team, because why would you get Kelsey Grammer if you're not explicitly telling us that this is like the X-Men that we've already come to know and for a fair share of the audience, I would say, love. So what did you think about this scene? I mean, I know we kind of already knew what to expect coming into this, but how did you feel about the execution of it? What it might mean, the implications, and just, how it connects to I guess potentially how mutants might fold into the MCU moving ahead.
Man, is Lashana Lynch going to last this time? That's my first question. They didn't kill her off 2 times already in the MCU now. Jesus, let Lashana Lynch live. No, to be honest, this is one of those post credit scenes. Still right now, I have no idea how to feel about this thing at all. I don't know what I'm supposed to put any feelings towards anything. Like, of course, the mutant guy, me, Desmond, the X-Men lover, I should be over the moon about all of it, about seeing Beast, about knowing they're in the mansion, about mentioning Professor Xavier. But we've been teased now for so long that it's like, I kind of don't want to see it until I'm ready to see it, until like you're giving it to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could have lived without the X-Men stuff. You could have just gave me like Binary in a different universe if you wanted to do that, you know what I mean, and not have to make it in the X mansion. You could have done that, because what deeper way to find your mom in another universe than in another hospital? You know what I'm saying? Exactly where you left her. Instead, we're in the X mansion. It kind of takes away from that moment a little bit. You see the big ass X in the back, you're like, oh, there goes that kind of type thing. So yeah, I don't really know what to make of all this. I will say Binary's costume is fire. They kind of killed that. I was like, oh yeah, that looks really good. They kind of killed that. Kelsey Grammer Beast. Yeah, I don't know if they home run. They had a home run with the way he was looking.
It's a bunt at best. It's a first base bunt.
Yeah, it was like it wasn't one of those ones that I was like mad at, if that makes sense. Like, remember when we first see that She-Hulk render, and you're like, whoa, that it wasn't that, but it was still like on a big ass screen. You were like, damn, that's not finished. Like, you can still look at it and be like, yeah, that's simply not done. And so I wish they just used more practical there. Put the man in a suit, at least, if you're gonna do it. Just put him in a suit. Don't use too much CGI, but they didn't. They went pretty heavy CGI route, and that was unfortunate. But yeah, man, I don't know. Overall, I don't know how to feel. I think it's just one of those things where I think I'm gonna like it when it's resolved, if that makes sense. Like, I'm gonna like it when they go find Monica Rambeau in this other Earth, when they talk about Binary, when they do bring up Charles Xavier in the X Mansion. I'll probably feel better about it then, but right now I was just like, it still feels a little throwaway to me, and that's unfortunate.
So I'll start with Kelsey Grammer coming back as Beast, who, Kelsey Grammer, great casting back in the day, by the way, like a really great casting for Beast. When I saw him, I was like, what the hell did they do to my boy? They massacred my boy. I was literally fucking Vito Corleone in that moment, because it does not look good, that CGI. And it's so perplexing to me, because Beast and the prosthetics and the makeup that they used in 2 separate trilogies looks really, really good. Like, the way that they dressed up Kelsey Grammer in those movies, great looking. And also the way that Nicholas Hoult looked as Beast really good. We have the blueprint for how to do good prosthetic makeup for Beast and make it look believable and real and tangible. And they just didn't do that. I don't know what it was. Maybe Kelsey Grammer wasn't available. Maybe he just didn't want to fucking sit in a chair for 7 hours to get I don't know. It's probably a lot of extenuating factors. Maybe they tried and it just didn't work out, and this was what they had to deal with. And so I would feel for them if that is the case, but that doesn't take away the fact that it just does not look finished. It looks rushed. It looks like something that they probably conceived of very, very recently and had to pull off. And maybe that's a part of the reason why they couldn't do full prosthetic makeup, because like Kelsey Grammer's like back on fucking Frasier apparently. So it's a lot to digest in that moment. Yeah, there's like a Frasier reboot on Paramount Plus, which, okay.
Oh
But
shit.
yeah, I think it just debuted. That's probably why he showed up to promote the show. But it was jarring, and I couldn't be all that excited. But really the reason that this didn't do much for me is because we've like already done this in Multiverse of Madness. Like,
yeah,
them referencing Charles, it's not like we haven't seen Charles Xavier. He just popped up like a year ago. Like he was there in the movie. And even like Maria Rambeau as a separate different Captain Marvel was already in that movie, and she got wiped the floor with by Scarlet Witch. So we've already kind of done this whole ordeal, like the X-Men, and it's not really a new thing. I mean, if you weren't tapped into Multiverse of Madness, then it would be like oh shit, that's crazy. And maybe that was a different Charles Xavier from a different universe, because he like did die in that movie, and they actively say his name. So I guess presumably this is two separate universes, but we've kind of already done this song and dance. And it also further complicates things, because what does this mean for the future of mutants in the MCU? Like, are they actively going to introduce a fresh new slew of casting and characters and start from scratch? Or are we just like playing the hits and like leaning onto those characters, like copy and pasting? Like, I don't know. Like, how do you feel about that at this point? Like, we still are awaiting some sort of official announcement about a mutant movie, an X-Men movie, like what their plans are. And so far, all we have gotten is teases to the old shit. The Fox X-Men universe, the music, X-Men 97 as an animated series, which all of that stuff has already happened. Like, are we ever going to get any new fresh mutants, new casting, new characters? What are your thoughts on that?
My hope, again, this is when it comes to the MCU, a lot of times all you can do is hope. Didn't they use that in the movie, or was I watching something else? It might have been Hunger Games. That's like hope is hope is one of the tool more powerful than fear. My biggest hope is that Deadpool and Wolverine will clear all this shit up. And part two of that hope is that all of this is like a long goodbye. That's my second like hope, is like, okay, we're seeing this to like maybe put away Kelsey Grammer Beast. Maybe we're putting away the old Charles Xavier, the Patrick Stewart. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe they're just doing this to say, okay, X-Men are coming, but here's our tribute. Here's our characters. We can have a couple song moments. We can throw a couple characters up here. And eventually, when it comes around Deadpool and Wolverine, goodbye. Like, for real this time. Like, goodbye to all those old characters. Now we can get into what the X-Men is supposed to be from here on out. That is my hope. My hope. My fear is that none of that is true, and that they are constantly just using these IP and characters we've seen before to perk up ears, get people interested, which of course is going to be part of it anyway, but that they're doing this almost for no reason, right? Like, they still don't know the direction they're necessarily going in. They still don't know who they want to show up, when they want them to show up. And to be honest, to have Monica Rambeau in this universe with a Beast that we know is a big swing. Like, that's like not a small thing. Like, that's a hard thing to kind of get back. You know, Monica has to come back, right? That's like a whole thing. They're in the plane. I can't turn the plane on, at least not until Monica comes back. Monica is coming back. And in order to do that, you have to find a way to that universe. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what's going down. Like you said, I don't know if they are going to recast all new X-Men. What if all the X-Men came from that one universe we just seen? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what's happening there, but I don't. There's too many questions for me to like be excited about it. There's too many questions for me to be like, this is exactly what's going down. And so, to be honest, again, biggest mutant head, one of the biggest mutant guys you've ever meet, but it's hard for me to be excited about it until we actually start getting into the meat and potatoes of what X-Men is supposed to be. And I agree, it's time for some announcements. It's time for a plan. This is what X-Men is going to do. X-Men 97, they're saying it's canon, right? Come out with the damn show already. Like, I don't know. Like, there needs to be more happening on that front. Not like little tidbits like this that we don't know what's happening. So yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah, man, I think look, if this ultimately is just a swan song for those original X-Men, those original cinematic X-Men, okay, that could be good, and maybe Deadpool 3 is the canvas for that, for that entire section and corner of the universe. I know, this new coffee table book that has the MCU timeline that I purchased, one of the statements in it, has Kevin Feige talking about the fact that everything that's happened is canon to a degree. Every movie
Right.
that's been developed, even if it didn't come out of the creative house of Marvel Studios properly, all of that stuff is at play. And we kind of already know that because we've seen Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, and we know Hugh Jackman is coming back, so on and so forth. However, there is a sacred timeline, to lift terminology from Loki, and that's what we've been following with the MCU. And so I do anticipate, because Kevin Feige is a smart guy, I do anticipate that for this sacred timeline, for this universe that we follow, the proper MCU will eventually get to X-Men, a new slew of castings, a new slew of characters, their own original X-Men to really start fresh. That probably is not going to happen until after Secret Wars, though. I think that that's kind of becoming more and more clear day by day that this is the multiversal saga. And because of that, the X-Men that we will see will be from things that you've already seen and known, whether it's the animated series, the Fox X-Men movies. But for new X-Men to come, for new mutants to come, you're going to have to wait until, I think, inevitably after Secret Wars, they just reboot all of this shit.
It's going to be the mutant saga.
It's gonna be the mutant saga, 1000%, because that can be its own saga. There's enough there that you can do an entire saga about mutants. So I think that that's probably what it is, and like you said, that's the hope, essentially, that they go that route, and that they don't lean too heavily into this nostalgia, because that can be a dangerous game to play as well. It's also strange that Kamala as a mutant was never brought up here. We learned that at the end of Ms. Marvel. I guess there was no room for it. Like her friends only knew that, but like still, I did kind of expect something to be said about that, and especially because we got mutants in the fucking movie now. Like how do we not talk about Kamala's status as a mutant? But maybe that's left for another day. We'll have to see. But that kind of brings us to the end of the movie. We talked about all the characters, all the moments. As we wrap up here, man, I want to get your final concluding thoughts on the Marvels, and as we usually do, where do you have it ranked against the larger MCU? This list is getting longer and longer. We got 33 movies now, so where does it fall within your rankings? Whether it's on the upper end, the middle tier, the lower end. How are you feeling about it, and what are your overall final concluding thoughts?
Overall, I'll keep it pretty short, man. I still had a decent time watching this movie. I wasn't never really bored. Things, of course, were disappointing at times, but I think this movie still has some really good things in it. You mentioned it really is Iman Vellani, Tiana Paris, and Brie Larson, man. They really are the heart and crux of the film. But they're in it enough for me to say, okay, I think this movie is fine. And it's something for people to enjoy. I wish that choreography from that first fight scene carried over through the film. But overall, again, it's a fine watch. I would just wish the villain was better. That Loki would have probably fixed a lot of the movie for me. But I by no means, though this is the worst box office showing of all time. To be honest, I'm not even sure this is like bottom 10. I gotta count actually. It might actually end up being bottom 10, but this film ends up right now. Again, this list is so crazy, and movies are moving up and down every day. I don't even gotta watch stuff sometimes. Sometimes I'll have a thought, be like, damn, I like that movie more than I remember, and I'll move it up. It's just like a random part of the day. So right now, at this moment, the Marvels exist at the 25th spot out of 33 movies for me.
Oh my God, that's my same exact spot.
Same exact spot? Yeah. That is insane. But my 25th spot out of 33 movies, which, to be honest, is pretty good. Something we don't talk about with the MCU a lot, even in its right now, we're talking about how the MCU is not good right now, blah, blah, blah. I still have yet to watch like a bad movie from the MCU. Are there bad MCU movies? Yes, there are bad MCU movies, but I still have yet to watch like, damn, I hate this movie. I hope I never watched it. That has not happened for me yet. And so to be honest, 25th spot of 33 movies is really good. Considering everything. But that's where it falls for me right now. Who knows with time? Maybe things make more sense. Maybe some of those post-credit scenes get wrapped up and makes this even more interesting or more important of a movie. Maybe those things happen, but for right now, that's kind of where I lie. And this movie turns out being just okay.
What do you have like right above it, right below it, like the top two
Ooh.
above it, the top two below it at this point?
So this is where it gets tricky. Right under it, I actually have the Eternals right now. That's what I have. I have
Do
the
we have the same
Eternals,
fucking list right now? Because I got got Eternals right under it too.
but right above it, it might not be the same. Right above it, I actually have Ant-Man and the Wasp. So that's probably different. I have
Okay.
Ant-Man and the Wasp right above it, and Black Widow I have slightly above that. So it's kind of the list of where it exists.
So it's also in my 25th spot as well. I have it right above Eternals and right below Thor, the first Thor movie.
That's not too far off. Yeah.
Yeah, Doctor
Mhm.
Strange is in the vicinity. The first Doctor Strange, Black Widow is also in the similar vicinity.
We almost have the same list. It's
Yeah.
close.
Once we get to
Hmm.
like the bottom list, we're talking
Yeah.
Dark World, Incredible, all that stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I agree. I think in the grand scheme of the MCU, there is not a movie that I actively hate. That has not happened yet. I'm disappointed by several things. Some things are
For sure.
somewhat mediocre. There are some bad moments, but overall, I think when it comes to the MCU, they have developed, at least right now, for me, a floor that they have not, necessarily exceeded beyond in terms of quality level, which is still a good thing
Hmm.
considering that there are 33 of these things. That's a lot of movies in a franchise. Now on the TV side of things, Secret Invasion is bad. I think that that's an actively bad show, but
Yeah, no, that's bad.
we'll leave that for that medium. For the film side, which is what brought them to the dance to begin with. It's doing okay, but all in all, I think that this film, it has a lot of problems. It's definitely messy at several points in time. Luckily, it's saved just enough by the chemistry of the three leads: Brie Larson, Tiana Paris, Iman Vellani. I can't sing their praises enough because they showed up here, and I think that they mostly did what they had to do with the material that they were given. Unfortunately, it just should have been a much larger canvas that they had to work with in terms of the story and the plot lines and the development, and of course the villain, which we continue to harp on. I think that there was more opportunity here. I was excited about the short runtime, but that clearly I think worked against it in this particular instance. And even though I'm not as high on this film as maybe some other people, that does not deter my excitement for these individual characters and what they might mean for the future. Still super excited about Monica Rambeau and what she'll bring to the table.
Yeah.
I hope we can get another season of Miss Marvel. I hope that that's in the plan and in the cards for Disney and
Hmm.
Marvel. And I'm still interested personally in Brie Larson as Captain Marvel. I just wonder if she is. I don't know if she wants to
Facts.
be here anymore, which I would totally get because she's
Hmm.
gotten way more shit than she deserves. And if she were to walk away from it, then more power to her because she hasn't really been acting in like real movies all that much lately. She's been doing franchises. I want to see her get back to that stuff. So hopefully she does. But overall, decent and fine experience. Just wanted a little bit more out of it, especially in this day and age where we get so much of the same stuff out of a lot of our superhero media. But folks, with all of that said, that's all we have for our thoughts on the Marvels. If you checked out this movie, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.